Myron, you screwed it up again. Unbelievable. What's that? Yeah, Randal Rouser's the guy from the infamous McFlurry video I did. Remember that? Yeah, I was really cantankerous that day, and I had a McFlurry. I was eating a McFlurry while debating the guy on the far far right for you guys. That was fun. That was years ago. Yeah, but he was on since. Yeah, we made up. He likes me. He loves me because I'm a Canadian. He's a Canadian. But now I'm a U.S. citizen, and I'm not so sure he likes America anymore because what Trump's doing. No, I don't think Trump really wants Canada. It's too liberal. It's too feminine. But by the way, this is the main difference between conservatives and liberals. It's or progressives, I should say. Progressives are more feminine, and conservatives are more masculine. And that's the main difference on any issue. If you take the feminine type stereotype on any policy, you're going to be a Democrat in the United States. And if you take the more stereotypical masculine view on something, on a policy, you're going to vote Republican. That's a very simple way to look at it. I found this fascinating. This guy here is a conservative, I believe. Randal Rouser. His camera gets better. His name's Josh. His name's Randal. He's conservative Christian, progressive Christian. They might not call themselves that, but it doesn't matter. I'm calling them that. And this is some guy named Braxton. Hey, Braxton, how you doing, buddy? We go way back. We went to separate schools together. That's how far back we went, Myron. Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to start this, and I actually did some fact checking. It's so easy to review debates and then see all the places where people got it wrong. Actually, Randal got a lot of things wrong, but not so much Josh. Good job, Josh. You actually did pretty good.
All right.
1,000 pound points to Pony Boy Garfunkel for being here first, and you're very close to all expense paid trip to Circus and Las Vegas Strip. And don't worry about the gunfire that happened last week. I'm sure they'll fix that by the time we get there.
Well, thanks for having me, Braxton. And thanks for having the dialogue, Randal. I appreciate it. Interestingly, this is not a topic that I'm overly excited to discuss, although I do talk a lot about political topics. I do have an interest in politics, foreign policy, all those sorts of things. It's kind of been a hobby of mine for a lot of years, but I like to address theological issues. And in a sense, this is a theological issue because a lot of the political has become theological. So the question that's before us is, how should a Christian think about the first 2 months of Trump's presidency? It's a kind of a wide open question because the term Christian could be defined a variety of ways in our political landscape. However, I want to focus on what the Christian worldview says of the government and its authority, and whether or not it seems Trump's administration is executing the authority and governance well or poorly. I'm sure that Randal will no doubt appeal to the way things look in a lot of ways concerning public comments or policies, those sorts of things that seem objectionable in particular and bring up a lot of emotion. But whether a policy seems objectionable or not is not the issue. The issue is whether the policy is morally justifiable and something that the
Randal, stop typing on your computer.
Ought to pursue as part of objective morality. So in line with both the biblical understanding of government and our own country's outlining of the government's responsibilities in its founding and subsequent documents, I want to just express this. Romans 14 outlines the proper role of government as just governance, punishing that which is wrong and granting freedom to that which is right. And the rule of loving one another ought to be considered above all else as we look at policy. So our response to this sort of government ought to be submission.
Submission, right. That's a good point by Josh here. From the Christian perspective, Christianity is different than Islam in one main issue. Well, there's many issues, but on this issue, Islam has Sharia law. It actually gives step-by-step guidelines how a government should be run, how a society should be run. Christianity doesn't have that. So this debate is between a conservative Christian and a progressive Christian and their view of Donald Trump and politics and how a Christian should respond and how a Christian maybe should vote. But really, As far as Christianity is concerned, God has given authority to all governments, even Hitler. In fact, I brought up that verse, Romans 13:1. Let every person be subject to the governing authorities, for there is no authority except from God, and those that exist have been instituted by God. So the reason why Trump's in power, according to the Christian worldview, is because God ordained it, decreed it, willed it, wanted it. Same with Biden previously. And the Christian's response is submit to it because God has put these people in power over you.
So what has Trump sought to do in the first 2 months of office? And as far as I can tell, he has sought to punish evil, grant freedom for the good. He has eliminated DEI-based policies and governmental programs that favor immutable attributes over merit, that smuggle in intersectional philosophy based on critical theory, otherwise known as cultural Marxism or Frankfurt School, if you want to go back even further. In his dismantling of DEI, he has eliminated diversity for diversity's sake. That's never a good idea. Diversity is not bad, but diversity for diversity's sake can lead to a whole host of issues. He has reframed the orientation of government's agencies towards equality of opportunity rather than outcome, which is what the E stands for in DEI. Equity is equality of outcome, which is based in Marxist thought and classless systems. And he has eradicated a toxic inclusivity that saw a man named Rachel Levine pretending to be a woman as the Secretary of Health in the DHHS in Biden's administration. Those sorts of things are gone. I think that is objectively good.
Yeah, I agree with everything Josh is saying here. For me, my biggest issues was immigration, critical theory, foreign policy. I never expected the Trump administration to do anything good fiscally. Although I am pleasantly surprised at the gutting of the U.S. federal government. I love it. And this is the main difference between masculinity and femininity. If you're a feminine type person, oh, those poor people, they're losing their jobs. Well, welcome to the real world, a masculine person would say. This is how the real world, the private sector operates. You go to work one day and you'll find out you're fired or you're laid off. Federal workers are finally getting a sense of what that's like. And I love it. And don't worry, they're not going to go hungry. There's food stamps.
Also sought to enforce our nation's laws concerning immigration and the legal entry into the country. He has brought illegal border crossings to record lows and has deported a myriad of illegal immigrants that had no right to be here. He's also bolstered national security by forcing both Canada and Mexico to play an integral role in maintaining their own border security.
Yep,
Mexico had long since ceded control of the Mexican-American border to the cartels, and Trump's tariff plan forced Mexico's hand into wresting control back from the cartels.
Now, the progressives will say, well, they were going to do that anyhow, and Trump's taking credit for something that it was going to happen anyhow. Well, yes and no, I think, but the tariffs is really putting pressure on countries to, when Trump says jump, they'll just ask how high, my king.
Canada had promised to implement more strict border policies in 2021, but had failed to do so. They started to implement those policies as well. I'm sure we'll talk plenty about Canada in this conversation. Finally, Trump's foreign policy has resulted in the first talks of peace in the Russo-Ukrainian war since 2022. Of course, we don't know how that's going to end, but it is at least an on-ramp. It has also resulted in the release of a myriad of hostages from Gaza, including American citizens. It's forced Europe to rely more on themselves than on the USA financially. And not only that, but Trump's pardoning of pro-life protesters and the signaling of support to the pro-life cause by having J.D. Vance at the March for Life is more positive than even I anticipated on that front. However, there are
amateur Randal, amateur. You don't type. You got to mute yourself first.
Things that Trump has done that I do not like. Absolutely, there are. First, the establishment of a faith office in the federal government might seem like a good thing to some, but I don't think it's trustworthy or good, especially since Paula White is kind of the person in charge of that and leading the cause. I don't like that. I think it's more virtue signaling.
But she's pretty. Josh, she's pretty. Paula White's pretty. That's why Trump did it.
Than it is of anything formative, and I don't like it at all. Also, Trump's trolling and rhetoric has always been a point of frustration for me.
Yeah.
And even while it's funny at times, I find some of it off-putting and counterproductive.
Yeah, see, this is another big difference. If you are a feminine type person, personality style, personality type, any type of that hyperbolizing, aggressive type rhetoric, it just puts you off. My wife doesn't like it. But I'm okay with it. It doesn't bother me. It doesn't bother me when people act arrogant and conceited and grandiose. And it's just, oftentimes, I just find it, like he said, very funny. It's funny if they're not that way, if they don't have the skills to back it up. But it's even funny if they do. It's like I think there's a natural attraction from women to men who are very confident.
Epstein files, though, was, in my opinion, the most embarrassing moment of the Trump administration yet. They promised to have these files released, and then when they did it, they fell flat on their faces. They released these stupid binders. They contain nothing of substance, and they promised, later they'll be released. Still nothing yet. So finally, I'm sure that Trump's issue with Canada is beyond the border issue. Beyond the border issues, I'm not sure what his issue with Canada is.
I can tell you. It seems I predicted the other day. I predicted that. What Trump wants is he wants the liberals in power so he can destroy them. And then a few days later, Trump basically said that. So if you want, to see the future, you tune into this channel. But what Trump wants is the trade deficit to go to zero or even positive, so a trade surplus from the American perspective. He wants basically Canadians to bow down, kiss his ring finger, and do exactly what he says on immigration, because Trump's foreseeing sealing up the southern border means now the northern border is now open for problems. And he wants all tariffs gone. Quebec is the biggest, stupidest province in Canada that has a ton of tariffs on the United States long before this tariff situation happens. So do those three things, Canada, and you'll be fine.
To be some sort of personal vendetta against Canada itself, which I find a bit odd, especially since the USA had a trade surplus with Canada. I'm not sure what he's doing there. I don't like tariffs.
No, Josh.
The USA had a trade surplus with Canada?
No. The United States overall, if you include energy, which I don't know why you wouldn't, the United States has a trade deficit with Canada. Canada has a trade surplus with the United States to the tune of, we're on pace for $100 billion, but historically it's been anywhere between 50 and 70 billion. Which as a percentage of GDP is really nothing for us, but it's huge for Canada. You take that trade surplus from Canada and you remove it, they now go from 1.5% GDP growth down to zero and maybe even negative. So without that trade surplus with the United States, Canada goes in recession. Canada's powerless to the United States. They can hurt us, but they can't really hurt us, but we can devastate them.
I'm not sure what he's doing there. I don't like tariffs in general. I know other conservatives have different takes on that issue, but I don't love tariffs. And I think as a matter of policy, they are generally stupid. But I also don't know what the end goal is with what Trump is doing yet, so it's hard for me.
Well, Josh, I just told you what the end goal was. 3 main things. You can watch this, and then you'll be informed.
To have any substantive, definitive stance there. And with a lot of this stuff, it's only 2 months in. So even with the myriad of problems that this administration has given, we cannot judge it in a vacuum. The alternative was a Harris-Walz administration, which would have devastated the American people. Their policies of open borders.
Well, some people would have loved that. So it would devastate the conservatives. But even then, I wouldn't have been that sad. My business actually has been hurt severely by Trump being president, because my business is fear-based on taxation. And so when Biden became president in 2020, I think I had my second best year ever in 2021. It's because, we got to put our money in trusts. We got to put our money in these different companies. We got to shift things around to protect our money from the Biden-Harris administration. Now that Trump's there, and thinking about, maybe we won't even have income taxes or estate taxes or any type of tax in the next few years. Maybe it'll all be based on tariffs or property taxes or something like that, or maybe even a consumption tax. Who knows?
Horrendous forward policy would have been carried on from the Biden administration, which had left much of the world on fire, and Trump is tasked with trying to clean up that mess. Abortion on demand and up to giving birth, and federalizing that right. Culturally Marxist ideology based on critical theory, which views society as organized only within the strata of intersections between oppressor matrices. And I'm sure that Randal will indicate Trump is ignoring court orders, and we can talk about that. I don't think he is. I think that this operates under the assumption that the courts are acting within their jurisdiction. Most are not. So given all of that, I would probably give Trump a B, maybe a B minus in his administration the first 2 months. And frankly, I'm not sure what's been so awful about it. I'm sure Randal will enlighten me. So that's kind of what I have. I don't know how long that was, but
Well, you came in at about 6.5 minutes, so I think that's appropriate, and you'll see the rest of your time. So,
yeah.
Randall, if you'd like to start now, I'll start the timer when you start speaking.
All right, thank you very much, Brax. Thanks, Josh. I really
Brax?
appreciate that.
Ooh.
So I'm going to approach it like
friends.
this. I'm going to say, what kind of values should one expect in a leader from a Christian lens? And among the things you should look for is that they seek justice, that they protect the innocent and vulnerable, that they fight corruption, that they oppose evil.
I think he's reciting Proverbs.
So I'm going to give select examples where I think the Trump administration, Donald Trump in particular, has been disappointing in that regard. So first, with respect to seeking justice, the Trump administration began on January 20th with Donald Trump issuing pardons for all of those who participated, more than 1,200 people, in the January 6th riots. Now, just the week before,
Whoa, he said riots and not insurrection.
or a few days before, J.D. Vance had said, quote, "If you committed violence on January 6th, obviously you shouldn't be pardoned." And yet Trump not only compared the people who were in prison for various crimes and being tried for them or allegations of crimes, he compared them to the hostages in Gaza, the Jewish hostages in Gaza.
That's not true. He called them hostages, that's true, but he didn't directly compare them to the hostages in Gaza. I searched, I scoured for that. I couldn't find it. So that's, I think that's a way to, something to say to really get people to hate Trump. But if you actually scour the internet, nowhere has Trump, that at least that I could find, said, the January 6 hostages are like the hostages in Gaza, or anything remotely like that. But yeah, I agree. He did refer to them as hostages.
But then he also pardoned them, and that included 172 people who had pled guilty to assaulting law enforcement and 69 who pled guilty to assaulting law enforcement with a dangerous or deadly weapon. And he also commuted the sentences of Proud Boys and Oath Keepers who had been convicted of seditious conspiracy against the government. Second example that raises significant concern for me is the pardoning of Ross Ulbricht. So Ross Ulbricht had run the Silk Road, which was the first dark web marketplace where banned drugs were sold by way of Bitcoin cryptocurrency. Ulbricht facilitated the sale of more than $200 million worth of illegal drugs and other illicit goods, making his impact on the global drug trade equivalent to that of Pablo Escobar. And he was convicted, sentenced to life in prison in 2015, but on January 22nd, Trump pardoned him, and Trump has referred to himself as the crypto president. I'd like to also say a quick word about Andrew Tate, a pornographer, accused sexual abuser, human trafficker, and big Trump supporter. Andrew Tate was released from Romanian prison and flown to the United States on February 20th.
Okay, I want to rewind this a little bit and talk about the pardons. I agree that I disagree with Trump with some of the pardons he did. Not all of them. I would have preferred commuting and some not being pardoned or commuted at all, the most violent offenders. So I agree with Randal there. But that being said, now we're talking about the choice between Trump and the Biden-Harris administration prior to November 7th of last year. What really bothers me, one could actually make the argument it is worse for Biden to have pardoned his family than what Trump did with the January 6ers. Now, why do I say that? The progressives are going, this is nuts, this is ludicrous. But think about it. It could be true. It could be true. But, very low percentage. What if Hunter Biden murdered a hooker 3 years ago? What if? I'm not saying he did. I'm making a point here. The pardons that Biden did would mean Hunter Biden would get away with murder because those pardons were not specific to any crime. It's like a blanket pardon. I think it's unprecedented. So that's terrible. Now, Harris is not Biden, and so we can't, Harris has never had the opportunity to pardon anybody. But the Harris-Biden administration, I would love to ask Harris, do you support that blanket pardon for all those people going back, even Liz Cheney?
A drug trade equivalent to that of Pablo Escobar. And he was convicted, sentenced to life in prison in 2015. But on January 22nd, Trump pardoned him. And Trump has referred to himself as the crypto president.
Yeah. So he's talking about a guy named Albrecht. Albrecht? How do you pronounce his name? And I agree that Trump was very hypocritical here, because Trump is on record of saying that drug dealers should get the death penalty. But here he pardoned a guy who was basically selling some really bad drugs on the dark web using cryptocurrency. He got convicted, sentenced. Was he sentenced to life? And he served 11 years. And initially Trump said he was going to commute his sentence, not pardon him, but then he ended up pardoning. The difference, for those of you from North Dakota, commuting means that it's you let them out of jail, but they still have that on their record. Pardon means that it's even gone off their record. So it's like it never happened. It's a huge deal. This is why presidents are above the law, because they have this pardoning power. So yeah, Trump was a big hypocrite there. But now one could say, is there any examples of Harris being a hypocrite? Of course there is. One example that comes to mind is Harris threw, 1,000 or 2,000 people in jail for marijuana use and marijuana-related crimes, and then laughs about using marijuana herself. That's kind of like being a hypocrite, right? Another example of Harris being a hypocrite is saying that Trump's border wall was a vanity project and a waste of money. And then years later, she ends up, the Biden-Harris administration ends up funding at least partial border wall construction. Every politician is going to lie, be mistaken, and be a hypocrite at times.
I'd like to also say a quick word about Andrew Tate, a pornographer, accused sexual abuser, human trafficker, and big Trump supporter. Andrew Tate was released from Romanian prison and flown to the United States on February 28th after the Financial Times reported that Donald Trump's special envoy Richard Grenell had pressured Romania to remove travel restrictions against Andrew Tate. So those are some of my significant concerns with respect to seeking justice.
Yeah, I just want to note Andrew Tate is an American citizen who has never been convicted of a felony. You can say Trump's been convicted is a felon, but you can't say that about Andrew Tate. Interesting.
Justice. The second one, in terms of protecting the innocent and vulnerable, so Josh highlighted some issues with respect to pro-life concerns. I would point out, from a pro-life lens, that Robert F. Kennedy is now the HHS secretary, and his nomination was opposed, among others, by Mike Pence, because when he was running for president a year ago, he was openly in support of the restoration of Roe v. Wade.
Yeah, it's interesting. Trump is willing to have basically Democrats in his administration.
I would also just note as a sidebar, pardon the pun here in a moment, but RFK is a lawyer who's the head of the HHS, which is like having a doctor be the head of the American Bar Association.
And he'll probably get way more done than the previous guy.
And he's a well-known anti-vaxxer, and I think in terms...
Now, this sort of thing kind of bothers me. He's a well-known anti-vaxxer. Randal, is that fact or is that opinion? Really think about it before you answer that question. Is that fact or is that opinion? Could someone say things like, he's not anti-vax, but he's pro-safe vax and voluntary vaccination? Is that the same thing as saying anti-vax? Does saying that maybe some vaccinations should be off the market and others on, does that make one anti-vax? It depends how you define it, right? I mean, this is a way to demonize people that I think is very unfair. And I say unfair because that's something the feminine quality traits in progressives like. They like this idea of fairness.
In terms of protecting the health of communities, that is a significant concern, especially with the continued spread of measles right now.
Why are measles spreading right now, Randal, in Texas? Why? Could it be illegal immigration?
Example would be Elon Musk unilaterally shutting down USAID.
Elon Musk has no power to shut down anything. Like, progressives need to get this through their thick skull. Elon Musk is acting as an advisor to the Trump administration. So he says, I think you should shut down this. And then the administration either agrees or disagrees. And Trump and Elon, when they were campaigning together, basically said, we're going to do this. Elon's going to do this. He's going to seek out waste and fraud. And that's what we're going to do. And it seems like the American people who voted for Trump are okay with that.
Musk, after making a $250 billion donation.
What? Musk never made a $250 billion donation. I think he just misspoke. It's $250 million.
To the Trump campaign has now
nothing. $250 million for a guy who has 400 billion? That's chicken feed.
Been tasked as an unelected bureaucrat by another billionaire, which looks to me very much like plutocracy. USAID was founded in 1961 to bring together foreign aid assistance programs under one agency. They distribute $40 billion annually in programs, including global health, education, and food.
Yeah, this is a big thing for people who lean left, who are progressives, who are very feminine. They will, like, what about the children? What about the people dying? And to this I say, if U.S. aid is doing some really good things, and if they are gutted and slashed by the evil doers called Elon Musk and the Trump administration, then start up GoFundMe accounts. And why don't the Democrats in the United States fund it? If they care about these issues, these people so much in other nations or research, fund it yourself. This is this idea from the left that the government has to do these things. The role of government is to do these things, to save lives, to save the children. Well, you can do that too. You don't need the government to do it. Now, some things, the government needs to help with, but you can work with the government in certain aspects. And there's a lot of actually Christian mission groups who do just that to help poor people.
Certainly it's not perfect, but unilaterally attempting to shut it down has greatly impacted many people. According to U.S.
Yeah, I can agree with that, and then still at the same time say, so what? It's not the U.S. government's responsibility to save every life on the planet. But Doug, we got to do what we can. Well, yeah, but you can do what you can privately, to private foundations and charities.
Say today, in February, more than $450 million of food from U.S. farmers was left to rot while people were starving.
Is that fact, Randal? Do you know that for a fact, that food was actually $450 million worth of food was left to rot? Is that a fact? Is that a guess? I scoured the internet for that one too. And there's actually no evidence of that amount of food rotting. Now, there was people saying that it could rot if certain things are not done, but there's no evidence that it actually did rot. This is sort of like they're eating the cats and dogs. You remember that when Trump said they're eating the cats and dogs, and then the left would scream, there's no evidence of that. Well, no, I'm screaming right back to you. There's no evidence of the food rotting.
Waiting for that food because of the actions of Doge. Musk also later conceded, among others, that they incorrectly shut down the funding research for Ebola, which he conceded was a mistake. I think there have been many other mistakes, and probably some of those are due to the fact that among Doge's employees are a 19-year-old high school graduate who calls himself Big Balls.
Just the fact that Randal would say that, it's like it bothers some people that there are people within the Trump administration working for Elon, finding this inefficiencies, finding the ways, and that they have this name Big Balls. Like, how dare that happen? Like, how sensitive do you have to be for that to bother you? Like, does that really bother people? That's not professional, Doug. I don't care. I don't care what you call a person who's actually finding waste and fraud within government. I stand with big balls. Well, that's going to be clipped.
On March 18th, a judge declared Musk's actions in shutting down USAID unconstitutional and ordered him to reinstate 24,000 employees. On the third one, in terms of corruption, I would argue that instead of emptying the swamp or draining it, Trump is effectively filling it. For example, there's his own selling of products, like launching his own meme coin, Trump coin, on January 17th. And according to the Financial Times, by March of 2025, so just in this month, Trump coin had raised over $350 million. So he's monetizing the presidency, which of course is not that different from last year when he was selling Trump Bibles for $60 each, which cost him $3 each to print, and he netted $7 million.
What's wrong with monetizing the presidency, Randal? What's wrong with, I don't know, being vice president and getting a book deal because of it and earning royalties? What's wrong with that? See what I did there?
This kind of conduct, I submit, would make the money changers in the temple blush. Trump also fired the 18 inspectors general, whose role is to be an independent voice of auditing, identifying corruption and inefficiency in the government. And after he fired 18 of them in January 25th, that had a chilling effect upon the IGs. Another IG named
Good, it should.
Paul Martin was fired in February, a day after he issued a report that was critical of the Trump administration's actions on foreign aid. So the message, I think, effectively to the independent IGs is, if you speak out, you're at risk of losing your job.
I think he fired a lot of them because these are the same people who wanted him in jail.
I'm also very disturbed by what appears to be Trump's deal with the New York mayor, Eric Adams, who was being facing trial for wire fraud and accepting a bribe, among other actions. He was given the charges against him were dismissed with prejudice, meaning they could be reinstated in the future. This appears to be a quid pro quo.
Keyword there is appears. It appears to Randal as quid pro quo. But I'll give you my take after he's finished.
In which, in response, Adams will now enforce the actions, the desires of the Trump administration, such as removing the status of New York as a sanctuary city. And as evidence of this, Trump's border czar, Tom Homan, said that if Adams doesn't come through, quote, "I'll be back in New York City, I'll be in his office up his butt, saying, 'Where the hell is the agreement we came to?'"
Yeah, and I'll play that clip. I thought that would be useful to clip. So this is what I think happened. Back in, and you can fact check me on this, I wrote it down here. Back in April 29th of 2023, Adams was drawing Republican praise for saying things like the Biden administration is failing on immigration. He said that. He said the Biden administration is failing. I'm paraphrasing. But basically, he was using Republican-type talking points on immigration. He was repeating them. This did not make the Biden administration happy, in my opinion. So Randal has this idea that there's some quid pro quo going on here, that there was charges brought against the mayor of New York, and that the Trump administration dropped those charges with prejudice, meaning they can come back. So that's like this constant stick over his head. You do exactly as we say, Mayor Adams, or you're going to go to jail. That's what Randal here is saying. But what I'm saying is Trump saw what was happening with Mayor Adams, and that there was lawfare being used against him for basically siding with the Republicans and saying, "Hey, I know exactly how you feel, Mayor Adams," Trump said. "They've done this to me too. We're going to drop these charges, and the deal is you're going to give us access to your jails. You're going to help us with basically removing New York as a sanctuary city. But the deal is not, if you don't, you're going to go to jail. The deal is that you're going to work with us as mayor of New York." And that's what he did. And I think a lot of New Yorkers are happy about that.
So it looks like they are using the Department of Justice and misusing its authority here to withdraw charges with prejudice in order to effectively force actions from people. The last example I'll give here is selling Teslas. On March 11th, according to Axios, Musk said he would donate another $100 million to Trump's political operation. A day later, Trump hosted Elon Musk on the White House lawn to sell Teslas.
What's wrong with that?
ABC News reports, quote, "This set off alarms around Washington over what some see as an infomercial for the billionaire's car company on high-profile government property." Trump even went on to say that it is illegal to boycott Tesla, which of course is absurd.
Trump never said that, at least not quoted as saying that. In fact, I think I looked it up here. Did I look it up? No, I didn't. But it was something that they're boycotting illegally. But Trump misspeaks all the time. What he meant was, if you look in the context, is that burning up Teslas, setting them on fire, vandalism. That's what he was saying about the illegal part. Now, can I get inside of Trump's head? Know that for sure? No. But you actually think, I guess some progressives just hate Trump so much. They actually think that he truly believes boycotting is illegal. You give him zero charity, zero credit. I guess you just hate him so much. But I really don't think that's what he meant. And in terms of selling brands, using the White House to sell brands, to sell the Tesla, in my opinion, I see nothing wrong with it. And if you are leaning left and you think, oh, I can't believe Doug said that. I mean, that's just terrible. Well, if that's terrible, then this is terrible. Let me bring this up. Here's the White House. There's a Rubicon Jeep. Oh, who's in there? Who is that? That's President Biden. What's he doing? He's driving it in front of the White House. Why would he ever do that? Oh, look at all the reporters, cameras. Yeah. So what he was doing there, it was like a promotion of American-built EVs, and Biden is basically promoting a brand. So if this is some type of debate between who's better for the United States, Harris or Biden, and well, the Harris-Biden administration, they monetized the White House. Harris got book deals because she was VP. Her husband did well in a law firm because of his wife was a VP. They promoted brands. Come on.
It's not.
Oh, thanks for the donation, Jacob Smith. Attention, Myron. Please rush some sparkling ice to PC Aid on behalf of charitable and private organization. Well, thank you so much, Jacob Smith. Myron, did you get that? Yeah, bring me some sparkling ice.
Illegal to boycott Tesla. Republicans, of course, know about boycotts with Bud Light, Target, etc. You can also boycott Tesla. I don't have time to talk about opposing evil, but we can come to that later. So that's my opening statement.
Oh my gosh, Randall, you came in at 7 minutes and 56 seconds.
Well, he timed himself.
That's making the most of your time. But I knew we wouldn't really need timers with guys like you. So, all right, thank you guys for your opening statements. And now we'll just go right into an hour and a half of...
Oh, I wanted to play this part. I said I would.
Floyd Benfield.
So one at a time, closing him down.
No,
This is what Randall was talking about, quid pro quo. So this is the mayor of New York. What's his first name? Adams. Whatever. And this is Tom Homan. He's in charge of the border right now. And Randall's saying that these two are in cahoots with each other. We'll keep you out of jail as long as you do exactly what we say on immigration.
more than one at a time. we have to close down as the population decrease. We put in place a 30 and 60-day plan. No one can stay longer than that.
Because your president that you were working for and what worked for his reelection let that happen and didn't take your phone calls when you asked for help.
100%.
He
I agree.
iced you out. So you're going to have a decision.
That's a good point.
Right.
Well, the days of the federal government paying the migrant centers are over.
Good.
Right.
So, Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
you're going to run for reelection?
Yes.
Are you considering running as a Republican?
I'm going to run on the Democratic line. We petitioning to starting soon. Running as a Democrat. There's many Democrats, like you look at those 78% that believe what we do, what ICE is doing about getting dangerous people out. I think that we have to get people out to vote. That is the problem.
But you're losing by about 25 points to former Governor Cuomo, who wants to be Mayor Cuomo.
Well, listen to this. I had another Andrew in my previous race. He was beating me by double digits in February, but we don't call Andrew Yang mayor. We call Eric Adams mayor. Never give up. New York is never give up. People had me gone months ago, but you know what? I'm sitting on your couch talking to Fox
You are
and
sitting
Friends.
today talking about the new alliance between ICE and Adams. So thank you very much for coming and
Thank
telling
you.
us the news.
Make it a
Alliance
regular-
was never severe.
Yeah.
Here we go.
And if he doesn't come through,
You're up early anyway.
if he doesn't come through, I'll be back in New York City,
Right.
and we won't be sitting on the couch. I'll be in his office, up his butt, saying, "Where the hell is the agreement we came to?" So,
And I want ICE to
we'll
deliver.
move
And I
forward.
want ICE to deliver. We're going to deliver for the safety of the people of this city. Let's
Okay, does that sound quid pro quo to you? They're sitting on the couch joking with Fox News. This is what Randall was getting at. This is the context. And I believe Holman's a former cop, and I think the mayor is also a former cop. And they're like two former cops, like kind of joking with each other. But I guess you can interpret things the way you want to. Thanks for the donation, D. Basilisk. President Hoover was the worst president monetizing his business. He turned the White House into a vacuum. Showroom. Shameful. Yeah, President Hoover. See, from the people from South Dakota, they didn't get that joke. Hoover. But maybe some kids are watching. They don't even know that Hoover makes vacuums.
Of direct back and forth. So you guys can start wherever you like with that.
All right. Randall, you said actually there's a lot of stuff that you said that I agree is an issue for me with Trump, which is why I wouldn't give him an A. The pardoning of January 6th protesters, I actually agree with a lot of a few of them being pardoned, but it was kind of a blanket pardon. I didn't understand why Trump would do that. Also, Ross Ulbricht, 100% agree. There are presidents that pardon people or that do stuff like this all the time. Not that it's good if Trump does it and good if someone else does it. It just seems to be the way of things. It's unfortunate. Biden does the same thing.
So I really appreciate that. Maybe then if we could just talk for a moment, the effect of pardoning the January 6 rioters, I would call them insurrectionists. The effect is, Trump talks about valuing police and protecting police. Well, we have police that committed suicide following this and that had extreme injuries as a result of the impact of the attacks of January 6 rioters. They were calling for Mike Pence to be hanged, which...
Oh, boy, we're getting into this. Hey, the fun way to make people on the left almost have a stroke is just say, January 6 wasn't that bad. By the way, I looked it up. The property damage of January 6 does not meet the property damage of the Teslas being destroyed. Did you know that? In the last week, the value of the Teslas being destroyed supersedes the value of any property destruction during January 6. That's a true fun fact. Look it up.
Is just an extraordinary thing. And I would wonder, what do you think is the impact on a healthy democracy when the people who were willing to expend violence in favor of getting Donald Trump back in the White House are pardoned? Like, what kind of message does that send for a healthy democracy?
Well, I honestly don't. I don't think there's very many people that think much beyond it now. I honestly
He's right.
It's most of the people that I know of don't even bring up January 6th anymore, except for when it's on the news and things like that. So I don't think it sends a huge
except
message.
for crazy, insane, far left progressives. I think they view January 6th like, I'm actually glad it happened because this is how we get Trump.
Any more message? I would say it sends a bigger message when some sort of So when an administration tuts other riots that are going on throughout the country, when the George Floyd protests happened, when a bunch of people took over the Oklahoma State Capitol, and they said, well, and that was a violent protest as well. So I would say that that has a more of a chilling effect than pardoning or commuting the sentences of people who participated in January 6th. Most of the people who participated in January 6th were not actually violent. There were a few violent offenders that I would have liked to see.
True. About 1% of the people there that day were violent offenders.
Stay behind bars, but
well, I listed almost 300. That's not a few.
300 out of how many, Randall? Wasn't there 100,000 there that day, roughly? And then at least 10,000 who went to the Capitol? 300 out of 10,000?
And I also noted that the head of the Proud Boys and the head of the Oath Keepers were both convicted in trial of seditious conspiracy, which is like the most serious charge. They were facing 20 years plus in prison.
True.
They've both been released.
There was about 5 or 6 of them.
And I'm saying, what does this say? What does this communicate now to these organizations like the Proud Boys and the Oath Keepers, that they are said, when you attempt to overthrow the government in support of Donald Trump will have your back?
Yeah, I guess I don't see it saying that. I don't actually see it saying that. I do believe that there are people that have come up, even people in Trump's own administration. I think J.D. Vance is part and parcel of that would say, hey, you know what? I can't remember who it was. One of his cabinet picks, I can't remember, said he would not have pardoned them, but Trump still picked them. So he's clearly still able to pick people that disagree with his handling of that situation. And so I think that kind of mitigates that message. But I want to move on. The Andrew Tate thing, totally agree. He's a scumbag. Now, it is worth noting that Trump, when it was brought up to Trump, whether or not he was telling the truth, I don't know. But he said, "I have no idea about that. I don't know why he's here. I don't want him to be here."
So Randall's, if you came late in the opening, Randall was making the accusation that the Trump administration made some type of deal with the Romanian government to make it easier or to allow Andrew Tate to leave Romania. There's no concrete evidence of that. But even if that's true, you got to remember Andrew Tate's a U.S. citizen and has never been convicted of any felony. Now, you can say he's a scumbag, but that's not illegal to be a scumbag.
So he said that, and then DeSantis launched an investigation into Tate, and now Tate's been doing the circuit and podcast, and he's despicable and disgusting. I have nothing good to say about him.
But if you're suggesting, are you suggesting that Richard Grenell acted unilaterally and independently of the authority or knowledge of Donald Trump to pressure the Romanian government to allow Andrew Tate to travel to the United States? Because it seems to me that's very implausible. And Donald Trump has a history of denying people that he clearly does know. For example, in 2016, when David Duke endorsed him, he claimed he had never heard of this person who was the Grand Wizard of the KKK, I believe. And yet he clearly did know who David Duke was. That was documented. He claimed when he was in the sexual abuse trial with E. Jean Carroll that he didn't even know who this woman was. Well, her lawyers provided pictures of him with her. So he clearly...
Yeah, okay. Steelman the other side, Randall. Pictures of Trump next to E. Jean Carroll. True. Trump saying he doesn't know who E. Jean Carroll is. Could you interpret that in a way for that to also be true? A very famous person takes a lot of pictures with many, many people. Forget about Trump, because a lot of people hate Trump so desperately that they can't think clearly. But just imagine a very famous person who you love saying, I don't know this person. Well, there's a picture of you with that person. That doesn't say anything. All you have to do, Randall, is take your hatred for Trump out of it, and then you can very quickly see it.
He did know who she was. So I don't know why one would believe him that he didn't know who Tate was, or to claim that Richard Grenell acted independent of Trump on his own authority. It doesn't seem credible to me.
Well, the whole report doesn't necessarily seem credible to me about, hey...
By the way, I think E. Jean Carroll's a scumbag. That's my opinion. I think she lied
Richard Grenell pressured him. I don't know what Richard Grenell did or didn't do. All I know is what Trump said in response to the question. So maybe Richard Grenell was saying, hey, you've got an American citizen, you need to give him more freedom of movement, and that was it. Maybe Richard Grenell said, hey, you need to let him come to the United States. I don't know, and generally speaking, I'm not trustworthy of most news sources these days reporting facts accurately anyway. So to me, I don't think that holds much. Yeah, sure. Andrew Tate coming to the United States is annoying, and I can't stand the man. I don't think that Trump cares. I don't know if I said that Trump didn't know him. Maybe I did say that. Maybe I misspoke. I think I said that Trump didn't know about him coming to the United States. And
sure, that's what I'm saying. As I'm pressing you on that, I think it's very implausible to think that Richard Grenell, independently of any support from Trump, comes as a representative of the U.S. government to Romania, pressuring them to release him and allow him to travel to the United States. I think he would only do that with Trump's awareness. And it just...
Even if that's true, Randall, what's the problem? He's a U.S. citizen found not guilty. He's not a... In fact, I think even the new court date, like they're trying to redo it, but I don't even think that's set in stone of when and where. So he's basically, I think Randall would appreciate the whole idea of innocent till proven guilty. It's funny because later on, Randall's going to talk about how terrible it is that the Trump administration had all these gang members flown to El Salvador, I believe, and that one of them was actually not a gang member, so the whole plane should have turned around and came back because he was so... They need due process. Well, in Romania, Andrew Tate actually did get due process and was not found guilty of any crime. So what's your problem? Is it just because you think he's a scumbag? And I mean, there's a lot of scumbags in the United States.
It restrains credulity to think that this somehow happened because he acted independently of Donald Trump's authority or awareness.
yeah, I think that I don't know if I agree with that. I think Donald Trump has a history of saying, hey, I have chosen you to do a job. Go do the job. You need to intervene on behalf of American citizens. I don't think Richard Grenell is coming to him and saying, oh, by the way, when I go to Romania, hey, do you want me to tell them that Andrew Tate's going to come, and they have a conversation about that? I think Trump's plate is much more full than that, so I actually tend to think it is not beyond inconvenience.
Okay, well, so Andrew Tate has now been in Florida for more than 3 weeks. If Richard Grenell acted independently of Trump's authority and against Trump's wishes, don't you think Trump would have fired him or come out with some sort of public statement reprimanding him for having brought this pornographer and abuser and human trafficker into the United States?
Careful, Randall. You may need to lawyer up. Well, he's in Canada, so maybe he feels he's protected, but this is like the Fox News thing. Like, Randall, if you were a billionaire, you'd be going to court for what you just said. If you're worth even $100 million, Andrew Tate would take you to court. You've just called him something that he has not been proven to be in a court of law. This is why Trump... How much did Trump win? He won, was it $10 million from CNN? Because, what's his... Yiannopoulos kept saying that he was a rapist when Trump was never convicted of rape. And he kept saying it over and over again. Careful, Randall. Andrew Tate might be listening.
No, because I don't think Trump cares.
He doesn't care about those issues, about bringing...
No,
well, he certainly cares
no.
if it's certain people, that he doesn't want certain people coming in who are criminals.
Well, but technically, Andrew Tate is an American citizen.
And technically, he's not a criminal. Randall. Hello, McFly. True or false, Randall? Andrew Tate's a criminal. He's a felon. True or false? You'd have to say false, right? Because you value truth, Randall.
Well, sure, I know, but I'm saying, but in terms of he does care if people come into the United States who are criminals and pornographers and human traffickers.
Well, yeah.
And Andrew Tate has not been convicted of any of those things. Well, and being a pornographer is not a crime. Well, at least Some of it could be, but
I'm sure Trump cares about he wished there weren't any criminals in the United States, but the United States citizens have a right to be in the United States. And so he's not going to say that every high profile criminal should be expelled from the United States if they're a citizen. That's not going to happen. I don't think he cares about that. That's what I'm saying.
Josh is the guy on the left. I don't know why you didn't point this out to Randal, that Andrew Tate is not a felon. He's not a criminal. There's no court, I believe, in the world who has found him guilty of any felony. I think that's true. Someone can fact check me on that, but I think that's true.
Okay,
Yeah.
but yeah, so I'll just say again, I think if Trump had a problem with what Richard Grenell did, we would have heard of that by now.
Maybe. I just don't think so.
Okay, fair enough.
He doesn't air out all of his grievances with every single person in his staff. He airs a lot of grievances. Let me point that out. He does, but generally speaking, with specific individuals in his staff, he doesn't do it until it gets to the point of no return for him, and then he goes hellfire and brimstone. So I've asked you a few questions. I'd like to discuss the USAID because I think that's probably a more important discussion than anecdotal things, because these seem pretty small examples of
These, like everything I've just talked about, is a small example in what respect?
Well, yeah, just individual people. I'm talking policies. There are
Good
plenty
point,
of things
Josh.
that presidents do with individual people that I don't understand and don't like. That's happened across the board throughout the history of the United States when I followed presidents. With their individual relationships with people, or plenty of things that they do that I don't like. So I think it's more substantive to talk about policy and direction of country than it is whether or not he likes Andrew Tate.
Okay.
Well done, Josh. I think Josh would have done better than me in this situation. Look at Randal. It seems like you got to stick up your butt about certain individuals, but why don't we talk about policy? Well done.
Sorry, I got to pick my dog up. I have a very neurotic dog, and he's been trying to get picked up for the last 5 minutes.
That's not a dog.
Okay, well, we can talk about USAID for sure.
Okay. Yeah. So in the USAID,
If it's not a German Shepherd, if it's not a Doberman, if it's not like a big dog, then it's not. It's basically a big rat that you have there, Randal.
Trump has said that he likes the concept of the USAID, but it seems to have been taken over by the radical left as a tool for indoctrination internationally rather than development. Did you hear him say that?
Yeah, I think Braxton jumps in here to look at the dog. It's not relevant.
Yeah.
And to remind them to keep this on topic about Braxton did something good there. He said keep this on topic with Christianity, like how Christians should respond to the role of government, what a president should be. And I just want to remind everybody that Christianity really says nothing about who you should pick for a government or what the government should do. Christianity is not like Islam. Doesn't have any version of Sharia law. Judaism does, but not Christianity. Christians ought to basically say something like, well, I got my preference, but whoever is president is what God has ordained.
That's part of the reason I want to get into some policy things too, because sure, there's a lot of things that, and I have been outspoken about that. I think Trump is not a Christian. There are people who do think he is. I don't think he's a Christian. I've been outspoken with the fact that I think he's done very immoral things, and he's not a moral person. So I'd getting into policy and how we should think about that. Do you agree that it would be good, ethically speaking, to root out waste and corruption in things like USAID?
It would.
Josh, next time say, do you think it's good to root out waste? Lean yes, lean no.
I think would be implied by my opening statement where I took issue with the firing of the IGs. Yeah, I definitely think we should have independent oversight to root out corruption and inefficiency.
Okay. Yeah. So
Why does it have to be independent? I guess just because you think that Elon Musk is so corrupt that
USAID, and I think there's a lot that in 2019, the USAID had 1,700 contracts. By 2024, that number is now 6,200 contracts. So it has ballooned. It was $27 billion in 2019. It's now $50 billion in 2024. Are we saying that the USAID spending in those 6 years is good? That
Josh talks a little too slow for my liking. I would just say, hey, Randall, USAID has done some great things, but it's really appearing like most of it is wasteful and garbage. And that most American citizens, even if you look at polling, are against it. So why don't we just gut the whole thing? And if there's some good aspects of it, we can, as a society, either pay for it privately through foundations or charities, or we can rebuild the U.S. aid, and that's that. But for people like Randall, it's like, but some people will die. Okay, some people will die. It's not the U.S.'s job to keep everybody alive.
that having that amount, that having that balloon and saying, whoa, there's not a lot going on here. There's a lot going on here. We need to actually check and make sure that this is going where they say it's going to go.
So
The problem is, if I speed up Josh, then I gotta keep slowing down Randall.
I would say that just the fact that spending has increased in a 6-year period doesn't tell you anything in and of itself about your value for dollar. So yeah, you should have careful analysis, but I don't think that begins with a 19-year-old named Big Balls who's working for Doge, and I don't think it.
I stand with Big Balls. I stand with Big Balls.
It begins with Elon Musk at CPAC holding up a chainsaw to give a visual metaphor of how he's going to destroy the lives of.
This is the difference between masculinity and femininity. Even men like Randall will be more feminine in nature. They see a guy wearing sunglasses and holding a chainsaw, and they're immediately, something's not right. They're a little bit offended by that. My wife would be too. Randall, you would make a good wife. But for like masculine men, at worst they laugh at it, and at best they love it.
By summarily firing 24,000 people without clearly looking at what each one of them is doing. So I think that the way he has approached the
See, but a lot of masculine guys, Randall, a lot of conservatives will say, we're okay with firing all of them and letting them cry. This is what the real world's like in the private sector. People get fired all the time. And then we rehire the good ones back. But that will cause disruption. Well, let's see. I bet you we could fire at least 80% of them. And we wouldn't even notice. We could probably let them all go, fire 100% of them. It might even be weeks before we even notice. My intuitions say that most federal workers are not worth minimum wage. When I say most, I mean over 50%. That they're a financial burden to society. That's my intuitions.
very values that you are espousing here, which I affirm, has been ham-fisted at best and perhaps, deeply harmful.
Well, to be clear, he's not holding up the chainsaw to say, hey, just wait until I cut all these. He's not specifically being personal with it. He's saying there is so much waste and corruption in the USAID. The chainsaw is hacking away government overreach, overspending, and government waste. And the government is funded by taxpayer dollars. And if our dollars are going to fund things overseas that are not moral or in America's interest, one or the other or both, then it is good to hack those things off with a chainsaw. And a recent study showed that in 2023, 9 out of every $10 that the USAID spent in 2022 actually just sat with contractors in Washington, D.C. They didn't actually even go to help the places where they were said to go. So 90% of the spending has been given to contractors in the United States in Washington, D.C., going to do all sorts of various work that may or may not be beneficial. In fact,
yeah. Now, if you're a left-wing progressive listening right now, please try to put yourself in the shoes of a conservative, because a lot of conservatives just don't like, they don't like this enhanced role of government. Sure, some of these things in USAID are great and actually do save lives, But from a conservative's perspective, but that's not the role of the federal government, in their opinion. And then plus they hear things, whether true or not. They hear things on the news about NGOs, non-government organizations getting funding to help illegal immigration. They hear these stories and they get a bad taste in their mouth. They hear about these NGOs going to South America and helping immigrants make that long trek into the United States. They don't like that. They hear about these NGOs and these other organizations, agencies, receiving money from USAID to fund the illegal immigrants to pay for their food, shelter, and clothing while they're in New York, for example, or Chicago. It leaves a bad taste in their mouth. So then the conservative says, just gut it all. Just get rid of it. And then rebuild it. Or just gut it all and don't rebuild it and have the private sector take care of it.
In 2019, it was found that only 43% of USAID expenditures, and this is before it ballooned, actually accomplished what they said they were going to accomplish.
So can I just follow up on the one fact? So you said about 90% in the 2023 statistics said about 90% of funding was in the U.S., and we don't know if it was effectual or not to that effect. And I would just say, yeah, and so again, I would say first of all, that's a meaningless statistic unless you can tell me what percentage was versus was not ineffectual, because it may be extraordinarily effectual. One thing I think that reflects is that U.S. farmers, that USAID is buying all this food from U.S. farmers corn and wheat and then sending it overseas. And that is, in principle, certainly a very admirable exercise of soft power, which benefits the farmers and which
benefits fathers. Randall's making this idea that if they didn't sell to USAID, then they would have nobody else to sell to. That's not true. I think that's the picture he's trying to paint.
For the last 60 years has ingratiated many people around the world in what the U.S. has to offer, just like the voice of...
Yeah, but this is the problem, Randall. Okay, I'm going to speak the progressives' language. I'm going to try to resonate with their hearts. The United States has done some terrible things in the world. They've manipulated governments and cause severe pain and suffering among the people in those nations. Progressives are agreeing with me right now. I know they are. You're right, Doug. Colombia, I mean, so many examples in history of the United States using even soft power to manipulate and corrupt governments. So a lot of conservatives today are saying, this is why they're leaning isolationists. They're saying, let's just not use soft power or hard power unless they attack us. Let's let them survive on their own. Let's let them do things, fight their own wars. Now, sure, there are exceptions and where we have to intervene, like World War II. But let's basically take care of ourselves first. And in very rare occasions do we step into other countries' mess. Or try to manipulate them by, here's some food, here's some clothing, here's some money for a DEI program in Serbia. No, I think a lot of Americans had enough of that. I hope that some of that resonated with the left.
Of America radio service around the world, which the Trump administration apparently just shut down this week.
Yeah, well, that's what I said. The second statistic was only 43% of those contracts actually filled what they were supposed to do, but yet received all of their funding. That was the second part of the statistic.
So then the question is this. So again, first of all, I'm not I'm not disputing that USAID has been inefficient in times. Perhaps there's been corruption. I mean, in any government organization or any...
The better way to say it, Randall, is don't dispute that at times the USAID has been efficient and good return on its dollar. That's a better way to look at it.
Human institution, there will be. The question is whether Elon Musk and his approach with Doge has been effectual at achieving the outcomes that they profess to want. And I don't...
Well, yeah, of course. If Elon Musk has not been effective, then nobody would be complaining. They're complaining because he is effective. He admitted this the other day. Like, there's many conservatives like myself. We're okay with gutting 80% of the federal government, other than Social Security, Medicare, because that's a special type of agency, department of the government, where people paid in with their own money and they are promised to get it back. Department of Defense might be another one, but I'm okay with even cutting a lot of the Department of Defense. There's a ton of fraud and waste in the Department of Defense. And then I'm okay with a few other agencies, but I would say you could gut 80% of them, and the United States would be better off. But reasonable people can disagree.
Think it is, and I gave a very specific and I think huge example, two of them actually. The first one pertaining to all of this $450 million worth of food that was stuck in ports because they had shut down USAID and it was rotting instead of going to people. And second, shutting down Ebola research, which when you interrupt research, often this is research that you've now destroyed.
USAID did not shut down Ebola research. Now, they might have stopped funding it, but the researchers can still do what the researchers do. But Doug, they're not getting paid. Why would they work? Well, they can get... Why didn't other countries step in and fund it? Why didn't private organizations step in and fund it? If you care about Ebola research, then get out your checkbook or start a GoFundMe and say, please, researchers, don't stop your research. This is valuable. We will pay your salaries. Why does the government have to always do everything?
Destroyed the whole study because you put a pause on it in 2 weeks, and that's time-sensitive information.
Yeah, so there's two things with that. One, I'm not aware of the food thing that you brought up. I'll just take your word on it that that's true. And I'm fully willing to say that when you're cutting programs and you're trying to deal with $50 billion worth of cuts and the 43% is effectual or not, there are probably going to be some downstream effects that we don't like. I get that, but ultimately, what Trump and the administration is supposed to do is try to figure out a way to make it more effective, and not just maintain the ineffectiveness that it is.
Yeah, make it more effective and get rid of our deficit because it's crowding out the budget. And so we're on pace for a $2 trillion deficit, I believe, in that range. I mean, we're paying interest on our debt. We have to do something. We just can't keep printing, especially with inflation as a risk. We have to gut. We have to cause people to cry. We have to. Someone making $60,000 in the federal government, staying at home, working from home, and doing very little, we have to put them on food stamps. Oh, that's going to tick off a lot of people. We just have to. We have no choice. We got to gut at least $1 trillion off the budget, maybe even $2 trillion. We basically just got to have 3 departments left, really: Social Security, Medicare, and Defense, and everything else is gutted. And yes, people in some third world countries might die from it. For feminine-leaning people, what I just said is like, no, they start crying.
The second part to that is whether or not people believe this or not, it's officially the position that technically Doge doesn't have power. They have responsibility to give suggestions, but they don't have
Good
power.
job, Josh.
It's Marco Rubio that is the one that is effectuating and actualizing that change. So it's not the 19-year-old. It's not Elon Musk. He can say, hey, this looks like
It's not
waste to
big
me.
balls.
And then Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, is the one that is proposing the cuts to...
I think Randal knows this.
...to the USAID. So I think that, I don't think that that Elon is an unelected bureaucrat in that sense, because he doesn't actually have the power. Even Trump said, no, Marco Rubio has the power, not Elon Musk. He has the power to give suggestions. He does not have power to effectuate change or to fire people. But we can grant him the power to be able to collect the data and to be able to present what may or may not be fruitful.
So this would simply raise the question of why is Marco Rubio persona non grata in ceding practically all of this power to Doge to act unilaterally.
Oh my goodness, Randal. What have you been smoking? Why is Rubio ceding power? What makes you think he's ceding power? Why couldn't it be that Elon Musk is making recommendations and Rubio agrees with 95% of it? Yeah, that's a good idea, Elon. Let's do it. Who has the power? Still Rubio, still the Trump administration, not Elon. Do you really think, Randall, that if Elon Musk said, I think we should do X, and Trump doesn't want to do X, who wins that argument? You know Trump is a braggadocio, narcissist guy, right? Trump's going to win that. He's the president of the United States. The Trump administration has the power. Elon Musk gives recommendations. Full stop.
Government agencies to demand to have access to information and then to unilaterally fire people. I mean, why is Elon Musk on a weekend emailing everybody in the government and saying, like, report by Monday at noon to your supervisor, like 5 things you did last week or you're fired? I mean, as somebody who does workplace investigations, this is unfathomable that people would act in this such a
He does workplace investigations?
lawless way, lacking any, I mean, how can Elon Musk be the person to decide? And you think about, like, somebody, let's say, who's working in with confidential information. They're supposed to send an email to their supervisor of the 5 things they did. I mean, it's just so ridiculous.
Why is that ridiculous?
Well,
there's no thought going into this.
Yeah, there is thought going into that. You just don't agree with it.
But that's not even what's actually happening. They've said if you're dealing with things of national security, you don't need to email in. That's what they said.
He initially sent out an email and he posted on Twitter, assuming that people on the weekend are checking their email, their work mail, or checking Twitter to see what, or X, sorry, to see what Elon Musk happens to be saying that day. Can I talk about the whole thing with Tesla, since we're talking about Musk?
Sure.
I mean, how do you feel about the fact that Donald Trump is promoting Teslas in front of the White House?
Well,
No
I think
problem.
he did that because people were blowing up, lighting Teslas on fire, keying them, wiping poop on them, painting swastikas on them, and doing that sort of stuff. I think it was a show of solidarity. It wasn't selling Teslas. I mean, people.
Well, of course, it's trying to sell Teslas. I mean, the whole point is to try to boost the stock and to sell more cars.
Yeah.
So, are you comfortable with the White House being used as a backdrop to promote a specific commercial enterprise?
Yes.
I think the whole point is actually to say, hey, you might burn and explode Teslas, but we're going to stand in solidarity with free market capitalism in the United States, and this sort of behavior is not going to be tolerated. And as a show of that, I, Donald Trump, am buying a Tesla, which is a great company that I like. And
So you are comfortable with it?
yeah, I don't care.
With
Randall, are you comfortable with Harris selling books and gain royalties from being VP?
selling Teslas in front of the White House. You're comfortable with the office of the presidency being used to boost particular private industry brands?
Yes.
No, recognize
Pro-American.
that the message isn't just to boost Tesla. It's to boost the idea that you can't just destroy people's private property because you don't like a company. And Donald Trump is saying, okay, well, I'm going to buy a Tesla, then come blow up my Tesla, right?
Yeah, what amazes me is, and this happens on both sides, I'll say that from the onset, it happens on both the left and the right, but I think the left is more guilty of it because the left tends to be more emotional. The left is more compassionate. Oh, the left agrees with me when I say the left is more compassionate. Compassion is an emotion, passion, compassion, it's an emotion. The left tends to be more emotional than the right, especially on negative things. The left is 55 to 60% female. And so they go crazy, and they sometimes can't help themselves. Just like the January 6th protesters, the really violent ones, they went crazy. But the left tends to go crazy too, more so. And they just can't contain themselves, and they got to act out their feelings. They throw tantrums.
That's the stand in solidarity. That's what it is. It's not to try to get Elon Musk's stock to rise.
Okay, so can I ask then? Can I ask?
Donald Trump.
Yeah.
Bought one.
When there was a boycott against Bud Light a couple years ago, you would be comfortable with Joe Biden hosting a Bud Light extravaganza on the White House to boost Bud Light's brand against all of the boycotts and attacks on Bud Light?
It's a free country. Why couldn't the president do that?
See, and this is the conflation here. If people were going to a Bud Light factory and trying to blow it up, or seeing people's Bud Light in their houses and lighting their fridge on fire, then yeah, sure. Say, hey, this violence will not intimidate us. Whatever. That's the point of it.
Okay, I'll just say I think that that's deeply mistaken, and that what Trump could have done, which I think you should rightly censure violent acts against Tesla dealerships, vandalism of Teslas. It's unconscionable. The way
You know what I think should be done to people who vandalize property and steal property? I think they shouldn't be put in jail. I don't. I think they should be put in front of a TV camera, put their hand in a vise, and have one of their fingers chopped off without anesthetic. And I bet you, if I was to run a poll within the United States, how many would be for that? Let's say theft over $1,000 or something like that. That you lose your pinky finger on your non-writing hand, let's say. Save the taxpayer a ton of money with jails and feeding them and clothing them and all that sort of thing, housing them. Just chop off their finger without anesthetic and televise it. This is what happens when you vandalize or steal property.
With that is having, let's say, the Department of Justice, Pam Bondi, give a statement, give a press conference, say this is what we as the Department of Justice are doing to target and fight against this, because this is unacceptable. What I don't think...
And yes, that applies to the January 6ers too. The guys that vandalized the Capitol. Don't put them in jail, just cut off their finger.
You do is turn the White House into a car lot.
Okay, so but how does that? I'm trying to understand how even that is something that's outside of like Christian morals and ethics. You might not like the optics of it politically, but
good question, Josh.
That kind of quid pro quo, where you have one billionaire hosting another billionaire's car company.
See, this is another problem on the left. They won't come out and say this often, but some of them will admit it. They just hate billionaires for some reason. I mean, they just hate them.
Using the public institutions and monetizing those public institutions, just like he did with Trump coin, in order to boost his friends so he can make more money. Yeah,
April Cox says, sounds very Islamic. Yeah, I'm on record saying there's parts of Sharia law I like, and that's one of them.
I think that is corrupt. I think that is a kleptocracy.
I don't think Trump or Elon Musk need help with each other to make more money. Do you actually think they do?
Well,
Trump is the only
the interesting thing is,
that has actually their net worth has gone down after being president than gone up. Obama was worth like $300,000, and then he became president. Now he's a multi-millionaire.
True.
Well, let's say Trump just potentially made lots of money selling Trump coin. If Trump's cumulative income went down in his first term, I would say that's not because he wasn't corrupt. I would say that's because he did a lot of things to tarnish the Trump brand.
Yeah, like in Randal's world, it's just orange man bad, no matter what.
But I think he definitely repeatedly monetized the presidency in the first administration as well. What do you think about the Eric Adams relationship with Tom Holman, and appears like the Justice Department removing these charges with prejudice so they could reinstate them again? It looks to me very corrupt.
Looks to me like it's very corrupt. Well, looks to me that it isn't. Now what do we do? Next.
Okay. I don't know. I don't think I would agree with exactly how you're framing that. But I will say that I do think that illegal immigration is actually a blight on the American system. The Christian thing to do as a president is to actually hone that in by as many legal means necessary. And it doesn't seem that this is actually an illegal means to do that. So I think it is actually within a Christian worldview, the purview to reduce illegal immigration by reducing sanctuary cities, by people who have entered the country illegally are by definition here illegally, and it is moral and good to deport them if they're here illegally. It is okay to do that. So I don't.
But are you saying that if Eric Adams has been charged with wire fraud and a bribe, that it would be appropriate to dismiss the charges with prejudice, which means they could be reinstated at any time, as a means to pressure him to accomplish the good that you're describing? Because that sounds to me like that's a utilitarian ethical model.
Randal, what Josh is saying is that he doesn't think that's what's happening. It's not quid pro quo.
I'm saying I don't know that that's what they're doing. You're telling me that's what they're doing. I don't know.
Well, what do you think Tom Holman went when he said that if he doesn't come through in supporting our policies, quote, I'll be back in New York City, I'll be in his office up his butt saying, where the hell is the agreement we came to? I mean, what do you...
The agreement is that the Mayor Adams would let ICE into the jails, let ICE round up illegal aliens and deport them. That's the agreement. That he would not try to inhibit ICE in their mandate, in their goals.
You think he's referring to there?
That.
Well, and he did that interview with Eric Adams sitting beside him.
Right, and
Yeah,
I
I
played
think
it.
Tom Homan doesn't have any ability to bring or press any charges. I think he's talking about the agreement to make New York City not a sanctuary state and to actually get violent illegal immigrants out of our country. That's
Randall,
what he's
before
talking
you come back on that point, let me just say some people in the chat are saying that Josh's volume just decreased quite a bit. I don't know if that was maybe something
Yeah,
that you do with your hand.
terrible.
The streaming software equalizes volume, so
I don't know.
not much I can do on my end, but maybe turn it up a little bit if there's a way to do that. But it seems like it's still listenable, so you guys just continue.
Okay.
So you mentioned some things about the war in Ukraine. Of course, Trump promised that war would be done in 24 hours of when he became president, if not before he actually assumed office, and that certainly hasn't turned out to be the case.
Yep, Trump
but I
is
would be
wrong.
interested in getting your feedback on the way that Donald Trump has talked both about Zelensky and about Putin, who I believe to be a murderous dictator. So Trump, on February 18th, claimed that Ukraine started the war, which is, like, to my mind, Russia Today propaganda. In fact,
My goodness. Was Trump wrong in saying that Ukraine started the war? Yes. Now, could someone charitably take that to mean that Ukraine could have made steps, could have negotiated a deal so the war would not have started? That also is true, and I think that Trump has clarified many times that's what he meant.
of course, Putin started the war in February of 22, and when he did, Trump called Putin, quote, a genius and, quote, savvy. He claimed that Zelensky is a dictator, which is false. He claimed that Zelensky has a 4% approval rating.
In your opinion, that's false. Some people will have the view that at least Zelensky is dictator-ish.
At the time, it was actually 57%. He has repeatedly falsely claimed that the United States gave $350 million to Ukraine when the most that was earmarked for them was $175 million.
I think he means billion.
So are you comfortable with the way that Trump has talked about Putin versus Zelensky and the way that he repeatedly appears to be siding with Putin rather than Ukraine?
So, so the thing about international foreign policy is what you see in public
speeding
is
him
rarely
up.
what's going on behind the scenes. Like when Trump said that about Putin being smart, it was because Putin sees the opportunity that Joe Biden left wide open because we're pulled out of Afghanistan, and Putin said, "Oh, America's not going to do anything about us if we invade Ukraine, so we're gonna go for it." That's what Trump was talking about. Trump uses these superlatives with foreign leaders, even ones that he doesn't like, if they do things he thinks are obviously smart. It's not bad to
Exactly. I appreciate the concession that he thinks invading another nation is smart.
Okay, but it's
And
not.
he does like Putin. You can't deny that he likes Putin. He's got affection for Putin.
Yeah, he likes Putin because he's masculine. I'm willing to concede that. I would say Trump dislikes most European leaders because he views them as feminine. And he likes Putin because Putin is masculine. Randall, I said it. There you go. However, two guys can hate each other and still respect each other in a way at the same time. Think about two boxers. I want to beat the crap out of that guy. They get in the ring. And then after, or even during the fighting, I respect this guy. He has skills. I still want to pound him to death. Well, bad phrasing, but you know what I mean. I think this is the relationship between Trump and Putin. I don't think Trump wants Putin to succeed in life. But Trump at the same time respects Putin because he's a man. He's strong. He's powerful. He says things and things get done. He respects that of Putin. So both things can be true at the same time. That Trump respects Putin as a man, yet still does not want Putin to succeed in all his wishes. But the bottom line is this, and this is what you should ask people on the left. Do you want to go to war, a full-fledged war against Russia over Ukraine? And reasonable people can disagree. Some people say yes, some people say no. I say no. I'm willing to carve out a section of Ukraine, say, Putin, there you go, take it, it's yours. I'm okay with that. Would I be okay with that with Florida? No. With Texas? No. Canada? No. But I don't care that much about Ukraine. I care about other countries a lot more. if you lean right like I do, if you're conservative like I do, just say that as bluntly and clearly to the people that you're talking to, the progressives on the left. Say, I really don't care that much about Ukraine. Like, I don't want people dying, of course, but I'm not willing to sacrifice a lot of money and definitely not American troops for this cause. That's that. So if you're not willing to sacrifice a lot of money and a lot of manpower to aid Ukraine, then basically what you're left with is concessions, conceding certain parts of it to Russia.
It doesn't. Saying someone's smart is not a moral exemplification. We're not saying. Oh, when I say, if I say Anton LaVey was really smart, it's not to say Satanism is good or Anton LaVey is even a good person. It's to say that he.
But if you do something evil, by definition, it's not smart, is it?
No, those are two separate words. So let's say Hitler was smart in certain plans he had to conquer a certain part of a country. You can still say he was evil smart. But I guess it's just semantics at this point, and who cares?
Well, I don't think, I think it's immoral, but there are a lot of smart people who do immoral things.
But you're equivocating. We're not talking about whether the person is smart. We're talking about whether the action is smart. So the issue is whether the action of invading Ukraine at this time was smart. And I think it was stupid in retrospect and at the time because it's destroyed their economy. But I also think it was criminal and it was evil, and I would never call it smart.
I know you would never call it smart. I'm saying from Trump's perspective, when he looks at what sorry, is that better? Because I couldn't hear myself for a second either. When he looks at what Putin did, he's not saying invading Ukraine is smart. He's saying, hey, Trump or Putin clearly saw an opening, and strategically speaking, if you want to invade Ukraine, it is smart to attack at that moment. Now, I agree with you that it doesn't seem to be smart because Putin definitely underappreciated the Ukrainian people's resilience and their ability to resist, and land wars are very difficult to win. But I don't think it's a moral superlative that Trump is giving out. I don't think it is. Now,
actually, land wars are... I disagree with them. Land wars can be easy to win depending on who you're up against and if you're willing to kill civilians. Most land wars end by civilian deaths.
Whether or not Trump has affection for Putin, I don't know, but I do know this. He knows how to get deals done, and this is the way that he sees it. He says, I have to be hard on Ukraine to get them to the table, and I'll get to that in a second. And I have to appear soft on Russia. That does not mean he is, and maybe he is. We'll see how this all shakes out at the end, and maybe I would say, yeah, that was an immoral way of ending this war. But leading up to this, Biden was backing Zelensky's play of returning to 2014 Ukrainian boundaries. And that was never going to happen unless the UN and the United States got involved militarily, not just financially or fiscally. Unless they got involved unilaterally and declared war on Russia, that was never going to happen. And so Trump comes in and says, look, this isn't going to happen. We don't want to get involved militarily. Zelensky, you have to be okay with ceding some territory. Zelensky says, I can't do that. I already told my people. If I go back on that, I already told my people that I wasn't going to do that. And Trump said, and Trump says, don't worry, I'm the bad guy here. I'm the bad guy. We'll get, and so that's why you see the thing that happened in the Oval Office. I think it was actually a strategic play by both sides to see the fact that, so that Putin would see that it looks like Zelensky is strong-armed to get to the table. But Zelensky knows there needs to be an off-ramp as much as anyone else. Now, the thing is Trump can't end the conflict without Europe's help in stopping to buy Russian oil. If Europe is able to just stop buying Russian oil, Europe has bought more in Russian oil than they've given to Ukraine in aid.
That's
over
a good
the last
point.
2 years. They've given Russia more money than they've given Ukraine, the Europeans.
Do you think that like Trump's repeatedly lying or saying false things, like praising Putin, calling Zelensky a dictator, suggesting, claiming that his approval rating is 4%, do you think that's all part of a grand strategy then?
Yeah, because he's...
No, that wasn't a grand strategy. I think Trump just misspoke. I'll even give the progressives what they want. He just lied there. But I actually think approval rating 4%. I think he meant to say it dropped 4%, but nobody knows for sure. I'm willing to concede he just lied. And the dictatorship, he backed down on that and said, no, he's not really a dictator.
That's how Trump makes deals. That's how Trump makes deals. So the question then is, is it moral to have this sort of strategy to end a war, or should he just say all the things we want him to say, and then Putin would never even come to the table at all? Clearly, now,
and at that White House meeting, so Trump said, criticizing Zelensky to his face, he's saying, this guy has all this hatred for Putin. I don't know what to do with this hatred. So I'm paraphrasing, but something to that effect, which I found to be extraordinary, because Putin is a first-order war criminal who invaded Zelensky's country. And one of the things that doesn't get enough attention is Russia has kidnapped between 20 and 30,000 Ukrainian children and sent them into the interior of Russia to be adopted by Russian families.
Okay, now, this is interesting. It's a sign of someone who's really intelligent to take something that appears so evil and steelman the other side. Most people can't do it. So it'd be equivalent to steelman Hitler, like say something good about Hitler. Most people just refuse to do it, can't do it, but I think it's the sign, a mark of a really intelligent person who can actually steelman the other side. So my challenge to you, Randal, when you see this, and I know you will, is steelman the Russian side, why they took 20 to 30,000 kids. Now, you can still disagree with it. I disagree with it. But steelman the other side. I can easily do it. Can you? In fact, steelman it to the point where that was the moral thing to do. To take 20 to 30,000, kidnap 20 to 30,000 kids. Steelman that was the moral option. And a really intelligent person can do it. If you're stupid, you can't.
Wouldn't he hate Putin? And to use that as a rhetorical critique of Zelensky, to my mind, is unfathomable.
Well, see, and this is, I agree that what Putin, bad. On this we agree, okay? Putin, bad. On this we agree. I think Trump did say, and I understand that in the conversation, he did say it. If you read through the transcript, he says he hates Putin so much, and I understand that. What he was pointing to was, this is why it's so hard to get this deal done, because of this animosity and hatred. He wasn't saying that Zelensky should like Putin. He was saying, unfortunately, to come to the table in an international conflict like that, you have to put your hate aside at some point. And that's the unfortunate reality, unless you're willing to completely sacrifice the rest of your country and continue in the war effort indeterminately.
You know what's interesting to me is in World War II, the United States didn't say, you know what, we got to come to some kind of deal with Hitler here. So let's figure out which land he gets and which land we keep. And during the Soviet Union, during the Cold War, presidents like Reagan didn't say, well, you know what, we got to concede, we're going to have to give something up to you. He said, Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall. And yet now I keep thinking, what we have here is one nation invading another nation, violating every international...
I bet you anything, Randal, that if Hitler would have stopped at Poland, most of the world would have said, okay, let's concede a little bit of Poland, or, let's just concede all of Poland to Hitler, if that's where it stops. But as we know, Hitler went for the world. He went big.
Law by doing so. This is like one kid on the playground grabbing another kid and starting to punch him, and you're saying to the other kid, what are you going to give up to get him to stop punching you?
Oh, this analogy. Kid on the playground. What are you going to give up to stop punching? Okay, what about the real analogy here, Randal, is this kid on the playground's punching this little kid. Okay? And you and me, Randal, we see this happening. Will we intervene? Yes. Will we intervene if this kid punching this little kid on the playground has 10 huge kids behind him? No. You and I might scream from the sidelines, please stop, please stop. But we're going to get our butts kicked. What if they're even holding guns? What if they have tanks behind them? This is the proper analogy of this playground scene. Russia is the second superpower in the world. Are you really willing to go through a full-fledged war with the second superpower over Ukraine that has a pretty detailed history with Russia? A lot of Ukrainians even speak the Russian language. No. Most Americans, I don't think, want to start a war, go into full-fledged war with Russia over Ukraine. Then the other option is, like with Iraq, is like containment. We didn't need to invade Iraq, but we could contain them for like forever. Now, that is an option, but at what cost?
It's such a different mentality I hear when it comes to Russia than the witness of the United States since World War II, and I wonder why that is.
Well, I think part of that is because this is not, regardless of how we want to see it, this is not primarily United States in a conflict. They're brokering the ending between a conflict of two nations. Whatever our interest is in Ukraine, and we do have interest in Ukraine, whether or not the war did not have to do with the United States versus Russia. It didn't have to do with that. In World War II, it did, especially, I mean, the United States wasn't interventionist until Pearl Harbor. Now, you can argue that they should have been. But
good point, Josh. So Randall's bringing up this idea that the comparison World War II to the Ukraine-Russia thing now, and how he makes it seem like the United States was involved directly in the World War II, but we weren't until Pearl Harbor was attacked. Yes, we sent some arms and food to Europe, but it really took an attack on our own soil before Americans actually got boots to the ground. And that's the same thing holds true, I think, with Ukraine. Until Russia attacks Oklahoma, no, we're not going to put boots in the ground in Ukraine.
That wasn't the deal. So I think that's the difference. Is now you're coming in and saying, hey, need to end this.
By the way, I got a 19-year-old son. This affects me. He's prime war age. I do not want the United States to have a full-fledged war against Russia. No. I don't want my son dying on a battlefield for Ukraine. No. I'd rather see Ukraine go entirely to Russia before that happens. Now, as a father, if you're a father listening and you lean left, I think you can at least empathize with me. The left is the party of empathy. At least empathize with that. Right?
Now, if Ukraine wants to say, we're not going to end it, we're going to fight until the fighting's good, the fighting ends, the question is, does the United States, do they maintain a moral duty to then intervene with somebody who isn't in NATO, intervene and be militarily involved in a conflict with Russia? Are we willing to do that? I don't think we are, and I don't think we should.
No, we're not.
That's the difference.
Well, I think you could argue, even setting aside moral questions, just pure Machiavellian self-interest. It is within the United States' interest and Europe's interest to have Ukraine as a buffer against an expansionist Russia and a murder.
Okay. It's in the interest of Europe and the United States to have Ukraine as a buffer. This is exactly why Putin attacked Ukraine, because they want Ukraine as their buffer. Again, a very intelligent person can put themselves in the shoes of their enemy, put themselves in the shoes of the people they disagree with, and use that argument right back at them. This is one of the reasons why Russia invaded Ukraine, because they want that buffer, just like Europe wants that buffer.
Murderous dictator like Putin. And so for that reason alone, it makes all the sense in the world to continue to protect this country. Listen, so you mentioned Canada.
Canada, there we go.
Canada.
Let's get
Who cares? Who cares about Ukraine? Let's talk about Canada.
This is going to get hits a little close to home for me.
He's in Alberta.
So Laura Ingraham interviewed Trump a few days ago. And I mean, this is Laura Ingraham. Like, this is not Rachel Maddow. And this is what she said.
Fox News.
You're tougher with Canada than you are with our biggest adversaries. Why? Trump, two things he says, quote, only because it's meant to be our 51st state. And he also said, one of the nastiest countries to deal with is Canada. Well, we weren't nasty until you repeatedly threatened to annex us. So first of all, there's that. But people initially talked about this repeated obsession with annexing Canada as maybe as trolling or joking, and that he's not. You don't continue to say something like that, which is so incredibly destructive, not only of international relations, but of businesses.
Okay, so Randal seems very confident that Trump is not bluffing here, that he really does want Canada as the 51st state. I am not that confident as Randal. Would it be nice? Sure, it would be nice as far as the natural resources go. But really think about this. Trump's not stupid. He knows that Canada leans left compared to the United States. He knows the 2 senators coming out of the 51st state would be most likely Democrat. He knows that the number of congressional seats coming out of Canada would be mostly Democrat. It'd be like getting a super duper California. It'd be like having 2 Californias in the United States. Unless you think Trump is a complete idiot, he has to be aware of this. Now, does Trump want the potash out of Saskatchewan and the oil out of Alberta? You bet. Would he love the electricity out of Ontario and the lumber? You bet. But does he want to deal with the social insurance and the Medicare system they have there and trying to transfer everything over to US dollars and how to handle Canada's debt, which is not Canada's debt per capita is pretty high, not as high as the United States, but they have a lot of debt as well. Does he really want to deal with Quebec, those francophones who are crazy and has so many tariffs against the United States? I mean, there's a boatload of practical problems with having Canada as the 51st state, and I think Trump knows this.
On the border I just saw a story about tourism from Canada to Tennessee has crashed, about the cancellation of cross-border contracts, about just antipathy and hostility between peoples that never existed before, all being fomented by this fellow who repeatedly...
Okay, Randal, I got to give you an insight as a fellow Canadian, and I know you're going to hear this, so I talk to a lot of Americans and I talk to a lot of Canadians. Guess what? Most Americans don't give Canada a second thought. They don't even care about your antipathy towards America. They don't. But I talk to a lot of Canadians, and they care deeply. It seems like in Canada right now, this is the only thing Canadians talk about, is Trump wanting Canada to be the 51st state. They're scared. Canadians are scared. They're angry. And in a lot of ways, they have united because of Trump. Trump has brought Canadians together. But from the American perspective, Canada's nothing to them. This whole idea of we had a friendship and now it's broken, that's only from the Canadian side. It's not from the American side. Sure, like America likes maple syrup and the idea of Canada and stuff, but no, if Canadians are mad at America or at Trump, most Americans don't give a crap. Be angry, they say. Doesn't matter. I know this is hard to hear for Canadians, but it's the truth. Americans couldn't tell you how many provinces there are, what order they come in, and what cities. They might know a few cities, but they would mix up the cities with the provinces. They have no idea about Canada. They know it's a big country that's cold. That's about it. And Canada is it's an ant compared to a polar bear. The United States is the polar bear, and Canadians are the ants. We can destroy Canada economically and definitely militarily just by snapping a finger. So if Canadian politicians are smart, they will bend the knee to Trump. And you can say this is unfair, this is bullying, doesn't matter. But this is the truth. Trump wants 3 things, and Canada will be totally fine if they do those 3 things. He wants the trade deficit to go away. He wants a trade surplus, in fact, with Canada. Trump wants Canada to buy more from the U.S. than what we sell to them. That's number 1. He wants all the tariffs, especially from Quebec, to go away. The 250% protecting dairy and that sort of thing, just go away. And he wants Canada to do whatever he says on the border, to seal it up, because he's predicting that once the south border's sealed, there's going to be problems on the north. That's it. Do those 3 things, Canadians will be fine.
Being nasty and being the 51st state, which is deeply threatening and offensive language. And I wonder how you feel about that.
I'll address this in two different ways, and I think we can move on to a different topic. One, when I went and spoke in Canada last January, what a dumb time for me to go speak in Canada, but I did. Dumb weather-wise, not any other reason. But I went up there, and a lot of very conservative Christians in the area I went into in Manitoba, and a bunch of them were like, "Oh, we wish we could be a part of Canada." So there's at least some of
You mean to be a part of the U.S.?
Oh, yeah, that's what I meant to say. Be a part of the U.S. So, and there was some really angry attitudes towards the Canadian government. I wasn't actually prepared for that, especially among the dairy farmers I talked to when I went up there. So I realize that's anecdotal, and I don't think Canada wants to be annexed as the 51st state. I don't think we're going to. I don't think we plan to. I don't understand what Trump is doing. And this is one where I go,
I think I do.
You know, so if you want cards on the table, what I think Trump is trying to do, and trying to read Trump sometimes is impossible. What I think he's trying to do is, I think he really dislikes Trudeau. I think he really dislikes the Liberal Party in Canada. And so that's why he's hammering them. I don't think that's good. Let me be clear. I don't think that's good. And I also think it's going to accomplish the opposite of what he intends, because I think Pierre Poilievre is dropping in the polls, whereas if he would have just left things the way they are, I would guess he would probably be close to solidifying the leadership as Prime Minister in Canada. So I, in one sense, I know that there is some conservative frustration in Canada of people who would like to rather be in the United States. On the other end, I don't know what Trump is trying to accomplish with his conversations with Canada.
Trump's trying to accomplish getting those 3 goals. That's what he's trying to accomplish. And he actually prefers a Liberal government being in Canada so he can destroy them. I just made a short on that. I predicted it, and then a few days later, Trump went on Fox News with Laura Ingraham and basically said what I predicted. He prefers to deal with liberals because people on the left are much easier to manipulate. And when he destroys them, what will end up happening is the Canadians will gravitate towards the Conservative Party in the United States. Now, he doesn't like the Conservative Party leader either right now, but he'd rather have a conservative government in Canada. And so he's going to basically do all this ultimatum stuff with the Liberal government, and he has free reign. Like, he can, if he destroys Canada, the Canadians are sure going to be mad at Trump, but they're going to also blame their government in power. Why couldn't you stop Trump? Why couldn't you do anything? And then after he destroys, like, let's say Canada goes into recession for a year or two, after he destroys the Liberal Party in Canada, then the Conservative Party will be very strong as an alternative. And the goal is then to work well together.
So, and I don't like it. So that's where I stand. I don't know if that's, anyway, yeah.
Well, yeah, Trudeau, of course, is no longer prime minister. So
yeah, it's
I haven't
Carney,
seen,
right?
Mark Carney. So I haven't seen any change in Trump's rhetoric. But you are right that there's a good chance the Conservative Party of Canada would have been elected in the upcoming election had Trump not repeatedly attacked Canada and attacked their leader, which has just caused Canadians to become more nationalistic and prideful and to retrench on the Liberal Party. So it's ironic that when we talk about Trump being a master deal maker, in fact, once again, he shoots himself in the foot by unnecessarily alienating and offending people. Are you comfortable with the U.S.?
Yeah, alienating and offending people. This is like the feminine characteristic coming out of Randal. People who are masculine tends not to bother them. Like, offend me all you want. Go ahead. I dare you. Call me names. Like, it took people how many years to realize that calling Trump a fascist, a racist, and a bigot, a homophobe, all these things didn't affect him. Now, there's definitely like things that you can say to Trump that will affect him, like call him poor. Then he gets a little upset. Say that he's not the biggest ever and the best ever, and then he gets upset. But calling names and that type of offending, no.
With Trump repeatedly talking about taking the Panama Canal back and taking Greenland, which both imply military action?
I actually don't think they imply military action. Basically, the Panama Canal thing is done. The Panama Authority has said they have divested interest in the Chinese. The Chinese are no longer going to do business there. I think past 2026, they're going to get it done earlier. And so I think it is in America's interest and in the moral interest of the trade and of the world for Panama not to have quote unquote private, because they're not really private, companies that are running the ports on each.
Yeah, the Panama thing's basically settled.
pretty much done. I don't think Trump means we're going to send. We might send military down there to aid Panama because we said we gave it to you to manage. Don't give it to the Chinese. But I don't think we're going to take it over by force. With Greenland, he's talked about voting in Greenland as a part of it. So he's not talking about or purchasing it from Denmark. He said we're with you if you want to be purchased. So we have military bases in Greenland right now. And actually, some of the history of Greenland is fascinating. In January, there was actually a recent poll that said 57% of Greenlanders actually liked the idea of becoming an American territory. I know there was a protest of a couple thousand recently against that, but 57% in that. Another.
Well, they just had an election, and they voted the person who's very strongly against anything to do with the United States.
Yeah, so another showed that 43% liked it, 13% were undecided. So I think this was Trump's way of saying, hey, Greenland, if you want to vote for independence, you can vote for independence and you can join our side. The reason, and then perhaps try to purchase it from Denmark. I don't think we're going to attack Greenland and we're going to claim
Language matters. Language matters, especially when you're the head of state. And when you say, I don't think it's going to be taken by force, I don't think he's going to invade Greenland, maybe I don't think he literally wants to annex Canada. The problem is language matters, and the damage.
It matters more for feminine people. Like women like to talk, and so the language is more important for them. For men, not so much.
In geopolitical relations with this of reckless talk is incalculable. So I find it very concerning. What do you think about his plan, which he's talked significantly about, to take over the Gaza Strip, remove all of the Palestinians living in Gaza, and turn it into a Gaza Lago resort for the world?
Yeah, he's kind of backed off on that, but I actually like his idea. Okay, so people on the left who are listening right now, put on your seatbelts. Are you strapped in? I'm for the ethnic cleansing of the Palestinians. But I've been told ethnic cleansing doesn't mean death. I'm not for the death of the Palestinians. I'm for the uprooting from their... Well, okay, let's be honest with each other. The Palestinians don't own Gaza anymore. A war was fought and they lost. Gaza is owned by Israel. It's their land now. They fought a war, they won, it's their land. And in order to protect the Palestinians, I'm for the ethnic cleansing of them from their Gaza land that they used to own, kind of. Yeah. Can I get an amen?
Comfortable with that?
Well, it's funny. Tim Stratton and I have talked about this. My personal opinion is no. I don't think the United States should be involved in Gaza. I think the United States should pull out, and this is where you and I might disagree. I should pull out and say, Israel, this is your land. Do with it as you need to do with it. We're not going to annex it or take control of it.
Well, Trump's never said. Well, he said take control of it, but I think what Trump was saying is he wants Israel to be the military around Gaza. He wants probably Saudi Arabia and Dubai, Qatar, maybe not Qatar, Kuwait maybe, to fund it, the rebuilding. So no U.S. taxpayer dollars. And then he wants the title, the deed, to belong to the United States, so that if anybody was stupid enough to attack Gaza, now you're attacking, declaring war on the United States of America, the superpower. So it's acting like a deterrent. I think that's the plan.
Well, I don't like that either. What I do like. So some of the things I do like is I mentioned them all. I don't think we've actually talked about a lot of the things I talked about in my initial little 6.5 minute thing. But I do think that there is some semblance of sanity, especially on moral issues as far as transgenderism in sports, as far as I wish he was more hawkish on one of the things I'll say that I think Trump, so I might move it down to a B- because of this, is his support for IVF. I don't like because I'm pro.
Oh, no. So Trump is pro IVF. And Josh, you're saying you don't like that. Republicans, you got to stop this. IVF is a wonderful thing. And it's helped so many people. It's helped me and my wife to have children. And you can even do it in an ethical way as a Christian. You can only fertilize the eggs that you want to implant. And then let God decide what lives, what dies. You have to stop with this. If it's not a penis and a vagina, then it's not godly. I mean, you got to stop this type of thinking.
Life. But I think the trans athletes of sports, I think removing the ability for, I don't think trans people should have active duty roles in the military because it is a mental illness, and I don't think we need that in our military. And I think it is immoral to continue to play into that. So I'm just going to throw those things out because we've talked a lot about the questions that you have for me. Again, Gaza, I think the U.S. should stay out of it.
Okay, can I jump in real quick, guys? I'd just like to say, as we're discussing military involvement as it relates to the Ukraine-Russia conflict and now Gaza and Israel and what all that means, I have to admit that in my personal worldview, I have a little bit of a conflict in my own thinking when it comes to military involvement at all, when it comes to violence that we see on the battlefield. And I just wondered, since this is from a Christian perspective, you don't have to give like a dissertation or anything, and I don't want to take away from the opportunity that Randal will have to answer the questions that Josh just raised, but I wondered if you guys could each kind of give maybe just a paragraph on your own view on just war theory or when that's appropriate and how that might relate to the current conflict.
Sorry,
I think that would be helpful.
Still
As far as
taking
the United
calls.
States is concerned, sorry?
Just in general, when is how do we feel about military violence, war, when to get involved, when not to get involved, those kind of things, to just kind of set up kind of the structure of the
Braxton,
arena that we're
that's such a tough question.
discussing here from a Christian perspective.
I'm going to fast forward. It's just
Okay.
too tough.
The cumulative negative.
Use violence in order to make that stop. If a gang members tried to take over my neighborhood and were endangering my neighbors, I'm morally justified in using.
So a couple different things there in terms of sports. The one thing I'll just say, first of all, is that I think that
in
trans.
response, sometimes there is necessary.
I don't know why these guys continually talk about trans issues when it's such a small percentage of the population.
More muddy because now we're talking about nation states and that sort of thing and who's the aggressor, who's not, which is why I'd rather see peace. But sometimes there is necessary measures to respond they should be doing or shouldn't be doing. Is there a way to guarantee peace?
the trans issues you raised.
Okay.
So a couple different things there in terms of sports. The one thing I'll just say, first of all, is that I think that I'm going to say, in my view, there's something of a cynical, but I mean, strategically wise use of this as a wedge issue during the election. And I think it got, with respect, outsized focus for its relative importance, given the full gamut of issues one should be considering in an election.
I disagree with that, but reasonable people can disagree, Randall. I think it's more, the trans sports issue was more than just the trans sports issue. It was the gender issue. It was the critical theory issue. It was the free speech issue. It was the gender affirming care issue. There was so many kind of issues wrapped into, but I do admit and agree that the sports, men and women's sports, was the easiest low-hanging fruit, because I think it's probably up to 75% of American citizens in the United States will basically say, no, I don't care if you're trans. If you're a male, you're not going to compete in women's sports. We don't want that. And even if it's only 10 people in the United States, in the NCAA, we still, if there's only 10 murders, we're against that. We're against 10 men competing against women. And guess what? We don't care if trans people cry. We don't care if we throw trans people under the bus. There's such a small percentage of the population. Doesn't matter. I believe that trans activists hate this issue. I mean, trans activists are more hated than far-right mega Republicans in the United States. That's how much they've lost on this issue. Oh yeah, this issue also affects like schools and education and kids being confused and having to use their pronouns. This issue is way bigger than just the sports thing.
And I think that was one of the things that
Oh yeah, check out, if you guys want to argue with me later, I don't think I'm going to take calls because I've already gone too long, but Discord, later today, yeah, I'll probably be on Discord.
motivated a lot of people to vote, and that helped to get Trump elected. So there is that thing to keep in mind. And so I think its interest is relatively lower compared to some of the other things we've certainly been talking about here. I don't have a problem with the government not supporting public funding for organizations that would have trans competitors in their sports leagues, so on.
How non-progressive of you, Randal.
And I've often pressed people on that. I've given them an illustration, like, would you be, if LeBron James identified as female, and this is not, and I don't mean this for people who are trans to make light of their experience, but it is a hypothetical that if LeBron James identified as female, would it be permissible for LeBron James to compete in the WNBA? And I've gotten very mixed response from people who would consider themselves very progressive.
Mixed response? You got mixed response to that question? If you are a person who says, I brought up this same example just the other day on a live stream. If LeBron James got hit in the head and then woke up the next morning saying, I'm a woman, I want to play in the WNBA, are you okay with that? If you get mixed responses, the answer should be, no, I'm not okay with that. If you're a normal human being. If you're saying, yeah, okay, it's self-ID, it's how you identify. If you're that type of person, you suffer from a disease called feel sorry forism. And there is help for you. We can treat that by watching PineCreek regularly.
Progressive on that issue, which I think is interesting. So I think even people who consider themselves progressive on that issue often find their intuitions with specific cases being pulled in different directions. Now, in terms of the military, I'm like, okay, so I don't deny that I think people who are trans experience gender dysphoria, and there are various ways to address their experience of gender dysphoria, of not identifying with the birth sex. But I would wonder, what is your basis for concluding that in and of itself is sufficient to exclude them from the military, irrespective of what any other views you have? Or how does that necessarily negatively impact them? And is there statistical evidence that really undercuts their ability to participate in the military?
Okay, Randal tends to bloviate. He hates that word. He tends to ramble. But for people in the live stream chat from Oklahoma, what Randal's asking is do you have any good reason to think that trans people can't do jobs in the military? Do you have any evidence? That's what he's asking. Let's see how Josh handles it.
Very effectively.
Well, I think any mental illness that leads to 47%, or I think 43 or 47%. I might be getting my statistics jumbled in my head here. 40 of self-harm would not work well to be in the military. That's not a good. So just like if somebody is on anxiety medicine, often they will get told that they can't join the military. So
not a bad answer. So a lot of times severe depression and anxiety is linked to dysphoria that is linked to trans people. So if we don't allow in people with severe depression or a history of depression and anxiety, then we shouldn't allow trans people in who have a high correlation. But maybe it should be on a case-by-case basis.
It's the same thing. When you have a worldview that, or not a worldview, but a position personally that sees that.
Mute yourself when you type,
then
Randal.
I think you are putting others and yourself at risk.
Here's my position on this, trans people in the military. This is going to shock some people, but I'm not actually against trans people in the military. Too bad I blocked Skylar because he's like, what? Doug said he's not against trans people in the military? But hear me out. Yeah, I said that. I think when it comes to like jobs like office jobs, anybody can do like filing paperwork and that sort of thing. But if we're talking combat jobs, I don't think there should be any women in the military. None. Actual fighting jobs, combat, frontline type stuff. However, I am all for trans women being in the military in combat jobs because they're males. They're males. So I think all women who fight in the military ought to be trans women because they're men in my definition. See what I did there? I got the left to love me because I'm all for trans people in the military. And I got the right to love me because I just want to be loved. Because I'm basically saying just men. No off position on the genius switch.
Do you have actual evidence, though, that I'm curious from people
Actual
who are
evidence.
serving as transgender?
Do you have actual evidence that your God exists, Randall? You see what kind of like, this is like, I don't like these questions.
In the military, do you have evidence that those specific individuals do perform at a lower level than cisgender people?
Yes, we do, Randall. The actual evidence is the performance scores of men and women in boot camp, boot training. The number of push-ups that a woman can do versus a man. The number, how fast they can run a mile, how long it takes them to go up a hill with a 50-pound backpack on them. Yeah, we got evidence of that. We got empirical data that says that women are worse than men. They're inferior to men. So if you're a trans man, you're a woman, means you're inferior than real men. There you go. How's that for evidence?
In the military.
Well, I haven't looked up specific studies, but I think generally speaking, when you're talking, especially if somebody's on cross-sex hormones and stuff like that, you can, if it's a male going to female, if you're taking estrogen and doing cross-sex hormones, you are going to start to be less strong. You are going to start to exhibit some of the features that a woman would exhibit. You're not going to be able to carry your duties that you were called to carry forward. So I would say, I think, even though I don't have the studies right in front of me.
I'm just imagining a submarine full of men, real men, and then a few trans men, which are women. I mean, how does that work? The showers? And if, like, you gotta, I'm missing some sex, and you're a trans man. You got that opening I desire. I mean, that's a real issue. You just can't put that issue to the side. But I guess men have openings that some men desire as well, so that's that argument.
My face, that it seems to be obvious. That would be the case.
I think that one needs to establish that one cannot reason from their armchair about issues like this to say, well, I just assume a person who is trans would be less effective in the military. I think one actually would need to have the kind of evidence in its place.
Yeah, and for the record, I think trans women can be very effective in combat roles. You get the intelligence of a woman with the strength of a man. Let's get all cis women out of the military in combat roles and just have trans women. Everybody's happy.
A categorical ban of people. And I mean, I would think if specific trans people were performing at a lower level in the military, then maybe they shouldn't be in the military. But that's very different from saying trans people just cause shouldn't be in the military. I mean, would you be okay if there were trans people that were...
Okay, but hang on here, Randall. They only make up less than 1% of the population. And if it causes any type of problems of within the military, why not throw them under the bus? Only such a small percentage.
As performing at an equal, if not superior level to their peers, if they remain, would be okay with that? Or is this not really an issue about performance at all?
That's a good question.
There might be an individual that is able to perform or whatever. I don't know. I don't think you can make rules based on individuals. I think you have to make rules based on the aggregate. And the idea is that almost 50% have self-harm tendencies. It is clearly at least as mentally challenging and possibly physically challenging because of the fact that you can generate osteoporosis and stuff like that, especially if you're on these cross-sex hormones. Given all of
I think a lot of trans people join the military to get the free healthcare.
Given all of those things in the aggregate, I think it is better than to have that policy in place. Yes.
So if hypothetical scenario here, if it were established that in aggregate a particular racial group performed at a lower level than another racial group, then you would support the categorical banning of all members of that racial group because of the statistical decrease in performance relative to the aggregate.
Okay, for the people from Idaho, what Randall's saying here is, if it was shown with evidence that African Americans performed lower than all other races, should we ban all African Americans from combat roles in the military? Let's see how Josh handles this question.
No, because the correlation isn't the causation in that case.
Well, I don't know. I mean, but now you're adding. I mean, here I thought you were just saying if the group statistically performs at a lower level, that would warrant excluding the entire group.
Because this isn't an immutable characteristic. This is
Great answer, Josh. Being trans is not an immutable characteristic. At least thus far, there's no evidence to say it is.
This is something to have to do with actual health and mental health and physical health. It's not like I was born black.
Great point. In fact, I remember listening to the audio of the Supreme Court ruling on, what was it? Yeah, I think trans people in sports. And this is one of the key points. Being trans is not an immutable feature, like your skin color, like your sex.
All right. Well, I think we've probably given that sufficient attention.
Yeah,
I would be interested.
Hold on.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Well, sure. Yeah.
Yeah, we've been going for about an hour 20 here. I don't know.
Fantastic job going back and forth. I really enjoyed that. I think it's going to be helpful. It takes us back to the discussions of our previous happened in the first 2 months. Terms there for you all to deal with.
Yeah.
Nitty.
Who wants to take this one? I guess I'll go first.
Go ahead, Josh.
Which is more Christian?
Well, I think not only is it more Christian, but it was a horribly decided legal case anyway. So jurisprudence-wise, it was appropriate to.
Oh yeah, I remember this. This gets good.
More Christian to repeal it because then you can move forward in various.
The left will like me on this one because I go against the conservatives on this issue.
Ways,
sort of,
to eradicate abortion.
Not entirely.
Randall.
One of the issues here is that, of course, abortion has become for many evangelicals like the defining issue, right? That defines them as evangelical, whereas a lot of the other things we've been talking about don't even measure. And I think, again, like with the transgender issue, that's disproportionate. So what Roe v. Wade, as I understand it, it's not my country, not my law, but as I understand it, it allowed for unrestricted access to abortion in the first trimester, and then for elective purposes, and then limited access in the subsequent trimesters for medical reasons, life of the mother and so on. Is that fair? Is that correct?
It just said that you couldn't establish a law on a statewide basis to limit abortion in those cases.
So, but it was unrestricted in the first trimester, right?
Yeah, but it did not. It would not be. It would not be against Roe v. Wade to have a law that was unrestricted in the third.
It was a right.
The one thing that I'd like to point out when it comes to abortion is that we all have intuitions. Most of us at least have intuitions.
Yeah, this is
about ontological development in utero. That the longer a child lives in utero, the greater the moral gravity of abortion or of ending the life of that child. As a case in point or illustration. So if you have a fire in a building, in a fertility.
Yeah, I agree with Randall here, and he brings up the classical hypothetical. And these guys don't like this. I'm sure of it. This is not a good hypothetical to ask these two types of guys.
Fertility clinic. In one room, you've got 100 fertilized embryos. In the other room, you've got one infant. You only have time to save the 100 fertilized embryos or the one infant. Where do you direct your attention and energy? And I think most people would save the infant rather than saving the 100 fertilized embryos, even though the 100 fertilized embryos are living human beings. And the reason why you would save the 1 over the 100, I believe, is a recognition of the moral gravity of abortion increasing because the significance of what it means to kill this individual over time increases. And so it's not unreasonable for there to be legislation that reflects that, and in particular reflects the life and health of the mother, the role for therapeutic abortions, which I think doesn't get enough attention in these conversations. I don't have myself a settled view. I'm torn up all over the place when it comes to an issue like abortion.
What do you mean by?
I can help you with that, Randall. Okay, Randall just said he made a great hypothetical. Do you save the baby crying in the corner of a burning IVF clinic, or do you save the 100 embryos on the bench? And he says he's torn about this. Here's a way to view it, Randall. This is the way I view it. Abortion's like speeding. Imagine a residential area of a city. A lot of people living there. And the speed limit's 25 miles an hour on the road. If you go 26, is it that bad? No. If you go 30 miles an hour, it's worse, but it's not that bad. But now you're going 120 in a residential area. That's dangerous. In fact, you could do some serious harm and kill somebody. This is what abortion is like for me. Embryo? Who cares, really? Like, yeah, it's a human life. It's an embryo, human embryo. Is it bad? Sure, you call it bad, but it's not. It's like going 26 into 25. 6-month stage? Now you're doing like 80 miles an hour in a residential area. 8-month stage? Now you're going 120 miles an hour. I hope that helps, Randal.
By therapeutic abortion.
So, well, therapeutic abortion would be, for example, like extreme example would be an ectopic pregnancy, or let's say a case of rape or incest. An 11 or 12-year-old is impregnated by her uncle. That could qualify as a therapeutic abortion rather than an elective abortion.
Randal, impregnated by your uncle? Let's be sensitive to the progressive left. You could be impregnated by your aunt as well. Come on, Randal.
Okay.
Yeah.
I actually think that the mental exercise there, I think it would be more apt to be like which would be less morally reprehensible, to bash the embryos with a bat, or to bash the 1-year-old with a bat, which one is more morally, I think that's more apt than which one would you save, because the act of abortion isn't about saving anything. The act of abortion is about destroying something. So,
well, that's not the point of the analogy, though. It's always important when you use an analogy to understand what the point being made is. So it's not meant to be relevant at the mode of death. It's meant to be relevant to illustrate the relative valuation of human beings at an embryonic stage versus at an infant stage.
Yeah, but I don't think it actually proves that. Like, I just don't think it does. Just because there's all sorts of other factors in play.
So would you save the 100 embryos, or do you not know how you would respond? Because I would save the infant.
Well, I think most people would say they would save the infant because not because they value the embryos less.
Yes,
but
it is.
because the infant is right there, the easiest, and the one that has the most immediate connection in our brains, like you said.
Immediate connection. That's true, and that is the sign of value. When you have an immediate connection with someone, you value them more. I have an immediate connection with my wife. I value my wife more than Josh's wife. I don't even know Josh's wife. I don't even know if he's married, but if he is. If Josh, your wife, died, guess what? I wouldn't cry. I'd be sad for you, I guess, in some intellectual way, or, empathy-wise. Apparently I'm average in empathy, but I'm very low in compassion. But I'll be honest with you. I would not shed a tear if your wife died, Josh. But I would bawl like a baby if my wife cried. Why is that? Because of that connection. And we humans have connections with little cute babies with their smiling faces and pudgy cheeks. But not with embryos. So we humans value babies over embryos. This is the problem with you Christians. You conservative Christians especially. You think God cries when you kill an embryo. You think God gets upset when you kill an embryo. And your desire to please Daddy, please your Heavenly Father, Abba Father, is so great. And even your fear that if by killing embryos, that Abba Father, Daddy, might actually take out his belt and strap you, that fear is real. You got to stop this. You got to stop this fear of God and this desire to please Him when it comes to killing embryos and your position on IVF. Now, if you're a Christian listening, either now or in the replay, full disclosure, I'm an atheist, but I am married to a Christian wife, evangelical Christian born-again wife. And we disagree on this issue. But if you're listening and you are either going through IVF or you know somebody who is, encourage them to do it. And you can encourage them to do it the ethical way, only fertilize the eggs that you plan to put in. And then if God cries or if God's upset with you, so be it. You think you're going to go to hell for this? No. This is not a salvation issue. You still believe that Jesus Christ rose from the dead, died for your sins. What I'm asking you to do is, if you currently believe IVF is a sin, but you're trying to get pregnant and you can't, I'm basically saying it's okay to sin. God will forgive you. Do it. You'll be fine. You won't go to hell. I don't think God is the type of God that throws tantrums. Do you think God's actually going to punish you if you go through IVF and take away your job, make you poor? Is that the type of God you worship and serve? Oh, you did IVF, so now I'm going to hurt you? Really? Why don't you try it? Actually, look at your Christian friends who have gone through IVF. Have their lives gone downhill? Has God punished them? If not, why would he punish you? The panel's frozen because I'm talking. Mike Hines. And they're all three. See, Braxton Hunter here, he's listening to me intently right now when I'm basically encouraging Christians to sin. If he believes it's a sin to do IVF. I'm not even sure if Braxton believes it's a sin. But if you do, Braxton, I'm encouraging your fellow Christians to sin so they can bring beautiful babies into the world and bring joy and meaning to their lives, the parents' lives. And Republicans, stop with this nonsense that IVF is some type of bad thing. Our reproduction rate's below 2.2, for goodness sake. Don't you want more image bearers in the United States? So do IVF. This has been a public service announcement by PineCreek.
Said with the intuition, but intuition does not equate to ontological value.
Well, there's different intuitions. Like if it's a moral intuition that my obligation first is to save the infant, that's very significant. If you're saying it's just a subjective, non-rational response that you could easily dismiss, then yeah, you should save the 100 embryos as surely as the infant. But I think that's wrong. I think it is a moral intuition.
I agree.
We can move on.
We can move on. Yeah, I don't think Josh knows how to respond to Randal on that one. So even though I've spent most of this live stream being very hard on Randal, mostly, I agree 100% with Randal here. This is a real moral intuition that we humans have, and that is the value of a 6-month, 8-month baby in the womb. The value of that is way greater than the value of embryos, or even in the 2-week stage, 3-week stage. And I know Christians like Josh want to say, well, there's no difference in the ontological value. Sure, we'll even give that to you. The embryo is created in the image of God. Fine. Ontological value, you got it. But practical value. When people have a miscarriage in the very early first trimester, they cry. But I tell you what, they cry more in the third trimester. I tell you what, they cry a heck of a lot more when the baby's 1 year old. Why is that? Because you build a connection. There's a relationship there. With a 6-month, 7-month baby in your womb, you can feel the kicking. You can get an ultrasound and see the face. We are pattern-seeking mammals. And I hate it. I know Christians hate it when a naturalist like myself refer to us as animals, but we are. Or at least we're very similar to a lot of other mammals, right? Maybe we should end it there. Yeah. It's a bit of a serious note, but still, like, this is what I hate about the Republican Party. But ironically, Trump is for IVF, and it makes a lot of his base mad, but this issue of abortion and IVF, Republicans, you need to grow up. You need to grow up. And I can try to appeal to your sense of, if you ever have had any experience in the foster care program, you see, and even adoption, you see kids being screwed up. I mean, these kids coming out of foster homes are screwed up. Even kids who have been adopted, when they find out that their parents are not their genetic parents, it takes an impact on them. It takes a toll on them. So if you can snuff out, I'll even use that language, snuff out an embryo or a baby in the 2-week stage, it's not a baby in the 2-week stage, and prevent a lot of these problems, like going in the foster care program because the mother doesn't want the baby but feels guilty because of God or whatever and doesn't do an abortion. Like, these are real life problems in society. And Republicans, you need to get over it, and you need to be more practical. And let God be mad at you, for goodness sake. Look at Randal. He's listening to me. He's going, yeah, Doug's making a lot of sense here. Don't be scared of God. Don't be scared of God. He hasn't hurt me yet. Maybe he will someday. Well, in hell, of course. But I'll take my punishment like a man. Okay, Jamie, are you still here? You want to do the Discord link? She's probably gone. I'll give the Discord link if you guys want to argue with me later. It is coming in the live stream chat soon. And I'll also read some of the live stream chat. This link's only good for like 7 days though, so. And if you're old, like me, you probably don't know what Discord is. That's fine. You don't need to. Oh, there. Jimmy is here. Wow. Thank you to any Christians who actually made it through this whole thing. Josh gave Trump a B-, I think he did. I give Trump an A. I voted for him for specific reasons, and he's doing exactly what I voted for. Sorry, but he is. Wow, this is an L take from Doug. Couldn't be more non-logical. You're talking about the IVF stuff? Where do you draw the line that's not arbitrary? No, it will be arbitrary. I fully admit that. What I'm saying, Roger, is that I'm saying something very obvious. That it's worse to kill a baby at 8 months than at 8 hours. That's just science. Yes, it's arbitrary. I fully admit that. Just like speeding is worse at 120 miles an hour than at 1 mile an hour over the speed limit. Is it wrong? Technically, yeah, it's wrong to speed 1 mile over the speed limit. Is it that bad? Nah. Is it that bad to throw embryos down a sink? Nah. Is it bad? Yeah. Is it that bad? No. But getting back to Trump, I give him an A because of what he's done with immigration, what he's done with the whole critical theory, and what he's done with Ukraine. I still think he's going to... What do I say? I'm going to make a prediction, because I've been on a roll with predictions lately. There'll be peace in Ukraine within 3 months. I'm not that confident on that, but I'm going to still make that prediction. 3 months. That there'll be some type of agreement. Meaning that there'll be a prolonged ceasefire, not just like a temporary one. Does that mean they won't go back to war 3 years from now? No, but... What do you think about Trump in the Oval Office with all those grifting pastors laying hands on him and worship and praying him? Good question, Mike Hines. I don't like it. Like, do I prefer it not happening? Yes. Does it bother me? No. I don't have a stick up my butt about these things. I'm pro IVF. This is the same logic used during slavery. What, that slaves are not worth as much as white people? Is that what you're saying? Oh, this is getting interesting now in the live stream chat. Like, I determine value of humans in a couple ways, but one of the big ways I determine value in humans is what they can do. That's not the only way. I think there is some ontological value in humans that we evolved with, but especially as for adults, among adults. This is the curve. Here, hang on. Let's get visual. Now, Christians are going to hate this. So if you're a Christian, put on your seatbelts. Hang on. That's the curve of value. At conception, your value is low. And just before your death, your value is low. Your peak value in society is probably around between the ages of 40 and, I don't know, 50. Like, I'm already going down in value. I still have value to my kids and my wife, but in society, my value is going down. Now, a lot of people hate that. They hate the truth, but it is the truth. Because what I'm basically saying, the bum on the street is not as valuable as someone who pays a lot in taxes. Yeah, I am saying that. Am I saying that their value is zero? No. This goes contrary to Christian teachings and even Muslim Judaism, that you have inherent value just by being created by God. Although I'm not sure what Muslims would say to this. They might agree with me. But Christians definitely wouldn't. Like Jamie is in her prime, my mod here, my only mod here. And she's very valuable. Whereas Skylar Fiction, who I blocked earlier, his value is low. I'm kidding, Skylar. I'm sure you do great work in your job and you pay your taxes. Thank you, Golden Nectar. What should society do to you in the next 10 years? Nothing. They should leave me alone. Roger says it's a dangerous slippery slope to define personhood by physical age, location, color, etc. I'm not doing it by color. I'm not even doing it by location, although it's implied with the abortion issue. But it is, yeah, determined by age. Yep. It's a dangerous slippery slope. Yes, it's a dangerous slippery slope. I understand you're assigning value based on your own factors and preference. Yes, this is my opinion. But I dare to say that if people grew a backbone and were to admit the truth of their soul, what they actually believe, they would agree with me. I think even Josh here and Braxton. Where are you, Braxton? No, that's the other guy. That's me. There we go. I think even Braxton here would admit that in some way a 1-year-old's more valuable than a 1-day-old. That a 2-year-old is more valuable than a 1-year-old. Oh, maybe that's too close. A 10-year-old's more valuable than a 1-year-old. Let's put it that way. And I think Braxton would admit to me that that me, a 50-something-old, is more valuable than a 90-year-old to society and to even their own family. Poof. My apologies to Randal Rouser. He was scheduled to come on and talk to me after this, but I forgot to buy a McFlurry.